Alrighty. We are live.
Yay!
Yay. And your camera looks
Is
clear
it
now.
my camera? It looks clear, but is it me or the stream that's making my camera stop?
On OBS, you look clear and fine to me, but that's all I can see right now. The tablet hasn't loaded
Okay.
yet, so.
Okay. Chat, let us know if something's broken. It's all on you guys.
Yeah, you guys are the quality control. Congratulations. Just like with Star Citizen, you are unpaid QA for the podcast.
Our users are QA. Oh, that's the worst, preconception. Star Citizen has it right with not only, saying that, but having embedded QA. I've known some companies no, we don't need your QA. We have players. It's like, oh no.
Oh dear.
All right,
And
cool.
so yeah, welcome back to episode 41, right? Yeah, episode 41 of the Pathfinders podcast. I am Tree0311. Here with me is my good friend and partner.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nazeris.
And we are the Pathfinders, and we are charting the way through all the nebulous information surrounding Star Citizen and its development. And before we get into the meat and potatoes of the episode, we're probably just going to hang out for a few minutes and get caught up with everybody. You know, give a little update on the channel and stuff, and then we'll get into the Roadmap Roundup and ShinyTracker stuff, which is actually a lot more to it than I thought there was going to be. After Jake told me that it wasn't a beginning of the quarter update for upstream and downstream, so there's a lot more information than I realized. Nazeris, how you doing, bud?
Hi. Today was weird but good for me, bad for almost everyone else. But today was good. Today's going good. This week has gone decently. I'm trying to again ratchet up content creation, except in a way that I enjoy it, not just I'm doing it. Which is basically, for those who watched all my stuff before, a month or two ago, I hit a wall of creativity, and I basically was trying to release many videos a week and trying to always put more content out, except I was running it as a business, but I was making zero money on it, and I'm not even, what is the ad supported on YouTube. So basically, I was just doing work for this crazy amounts of work for free, and I just ran into a very hard wall. And I enjoy content creation to at least some degree, so I don't want to abandon it. But I'm basically ripped down to the core, to the bare bones house, and have to rebuild what it is for me to be a content creator. So
Yeah,
that's
figuring
been
out
fun.
what your identity is, you know.
Exactly. I have been doing this for 8 years without knowing that. And it's terrible, and I don't know what that means. So basically, long story short, the Nova Forge channel on YouTube is going to be for only Star Citizen content. The Nazeris channel is going to be my junk drawer of content. I will probably be doing
full of USB-C
Minecraft at some point
cables
because
and
yep. I will probably do Minecraft at some point. I have plans to do Space Engineers content, specifically tutorials, because there's a lot of things that people don't know. Maybe some Star Citizen stuff that I don't want to put on the Star Citizen specific channel. What content? Not a darn clue right now. Basically, I'm just trying to figure out what I enjoy doing and to not do something to burn out. Because one of the big problems with me in content is my interests are cyclical, or they have cycles. I'll play Star Citizen for a couple months and then not want to touch it for a month, and then play
I do the
Space
exact
Engineers for a
same
couple
thing.
months.
Yep.
And a lot of my friends, they go through a couple weeks and they'll be on to the next one, then the next one, then the next one, the next one. They don't come back around to it for months and months and months. I have basically 5 games that I just continue to churn through. So it will always come back around. So I'm trying to figure out how to work with that and make content, which is not exactly good, but it's something I want to enjoy doing, not something I'm doing because I'm chasing a paycheck, because that is fun fact, not the right way to do it, even though every tutorial says, hey, that's the wrong way of doing things.
Well, and streaming
Um,
while you're playing a game is hard, and you're basically having to use two sides of your brain to do two different things at the same
I,
time, and it does
funnily
impact the level
enough,
of fun.
funnily enough, I love playing games on stream. In fact, I have decided that
Oh, I
my
enjoy
Twitch
it. It's just
stream.
definitely a lot more work. I can't zone out and relax while playing a game on stream like I can if
Yeah,
I'm just going to sit down and play the game.
that's absolutely true. There are very few times I actually do that though. My the biggest problem is not the zoning out for me. It's the when I'm playing a game, so I'm playing like Space Engineers or something. I'm doing five other things and like playing Space Engineers for 5 minutes, designing something in SketchUp for 5 minutes, watching a YouTube video for half an hour, and it's bouncing between these. Makes for a terrible show on stream. Um, I've also decided that my Twitch channel is not going to be locked to Star Citizen. Um, I'm sure most people in chat have heard Paul say, "Show me a Star Citizen streamer, and I'll show you a variety streamer."
Yep.
Yeah, that's gonna be a thing. Basically, what's gonna happen with my Twitch channel is I'm gonna be playing whatever the heck I feel like it that day. I don't currently have a schedule. I know that I need to get back on a content schedule because that is the backbone of existence itself, basically routines and schedules and things. But for I don't like I do as much as the channel is for me. It is for me to be able to benefit you. Like that's how I feel about my channel. It is giving me a creative outlet, but gives me a way to enrich people's life with that creative outlet. It's not just frivolous, I guess. It's something to benefit as many people as possible. So I need to get back on a schedule. I need to figure that whole thing out. My biggest problem is I want to do it earlier, but I have a job that sucks scheduling. Otherwise, so I like 2 weeks ago I had no hours. I had 5 out of 6 out of 7 days off that week, and today I have 2, being Sunday, which I normally work, and Wednesday. And then I work. It's the scheduling of this job is the worst I've ever seen. So scheduling anything that could ever be a within work hours, which is store open to store close, is a terrible idea. And if I want to make a permanent day, I need to schedule it after the store closes. Doesn't matter if I work or not, which means I have to do it in late evening.
Yeah,
Super
I
hard.
hear you. It's I've been a very I've always worked very odd hours and days my entire adult life, and now once
mm,
I get back from this school, I'm not going to be working a full time job. I'm going to be working part time and doing teaching on the side. I'm like, oh man, I might be able to actually, working part time means I get to pick what days I want to work, out of the what's left over, you know, and so I can plan around that a whole lot better when it comes to doing streams, instead of just we're gonna do this day for the podcast, and we've got to be flexible. So I'm hoping to be able to do things a little bit more regularly and also have more free time for working on videos. So if you're in chat watching now or you're watching this later on YouTube and you're like, wait a minute, I've watched the episodes before and there's something different about Tree's camera or the audio. It's because I'm in a hotel. I'm living in a hotel in San Antonio, and it's not because I'm getting divorced and my wife is leaving me or anything like that. No, I'm on active duty orders with the Army. I'm at a course down at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio. I'll be here for another almost 5 weeks. And then I'm probably going to go straight from here to another course in Arkansas or Alabama. I can't remember. Wherever Fort Rucker is, I
wow.
forget. Yeah, for another month. So uh, I, I've been keeping up. It's a pretty, for me, this is all just refresher. I could easily teach this course. I'm only having to go through it because the waiver program that I came into my job with the Army is going away. And so it's like, okay, well, you're no longer going to be waived. And even though you've been doing this job for years and years and years on the civilian side, you have to go through our course now. And it's like, all right, fine, you're going to pay me. okay, twist my arm, but it also means that I have to be away from my family for several months and away from home, and using my portable setup to try and stream and do podcast stuff. Luckily, I don't have to, work hard to get through this class at all. But it just I've got
show up, write your
I've got a
name on it.
laptop, I've got hotel internet, and I had my wife ship my mic and my camera to me, so at least my audio devices are better than using just this camera and microphone on the laptop. So I'm making do, and I appreciate everybody's patience. And if you see drop frames and little glitches, it's just because the internet here, the bandwidth is actually pretty decent, but it'll be going, and then right back up. But it just has little glitch periods. And Walker 300 just said, "Have you had a chance to meet up with Paul?" Paul and Jake and I are getting together this Friday evening, up in Austin.
I actually have to. Friday.
Nope, this Friday. We were going to do it last Friday, but I forget what it was. It was a scheduling thing for Paul. But yeah, after this Friday is the plan. They're both free. I'm free. I should be done pretty early, so I'm probably just going to head up there. But we're just going to get together for dinner and drinks and hang out. And I don't know if Paul's wife is going to be joining us. But yeah, we're just going to hang out and BS and have a good time. And this is in lieu of because I have a conference that I'll be teaching at in October, literally the weekend of CitizenCon. Unless the dates change for when I'm speaking, I will not be able to make CitizenCon. So I was like, well, I'm going to be in Texas and only an hour away from Paul and Jake. And Jake, told Naz and I in Discord, when you guys go to CitizenCon, I want to buy you guys a drink, because he knows that we're big fans of the progress tracker and the roadmap, and we're always talking to him and asking him questions. And I was like, well, I'm not going to be able to make it, so let me buy you a drink when I'm in Texas. And so here we are. This last week did episode 5 of Armchair Admirals and Generals. Had a really good time with Nightcobb and Atira Kell. That episode is the episode and its individual segments are up on my YouTube now, so go check them out if you haven't already. We are already in the planning phases for episode 6. We are shooting for the first weekend in May. Don't know if it's going to be Saturday or Sunday yet, but that's the plan. And I'm already drawing up our resource document so that we can start making notes. That being said, big announcement. I'm expanding the roster for Armchair Admirals and Generals at the recommendation.
This is news to me. This is the first time I'm hearing about it, too.
It's just over this last weekend, so it is very very news. But at Atira Kell and Nightcobb and I have been batting around the idea of getting more veteran and military voices onto the podcast, with different people with different backgrounds, people from different branches, because Nightcobb is Navy, Atira is Army. I'm originally Marine, but now I'm also Army. We don't have Air Force representation. We don't have any representation from other countries' militaries. So I've been reaching out.
The Coast Guard.
Yeah. Well, so I've been reaching out to other content creators and other people in the community, not just content creators, to see, hey, would you be interested in coming on the show, talking about Star Citizen, topics that we can. Oh, sweet, the bot worked. We'll get that in a second. And that literally took me the better part of an afternoon to get working. But so I have recruited. Yeah. Oh gosh, we need to get some Guardians in here. But yeah, so
Space Force. Oh no.
If you are familiar with info runners, you probably know Badgers, or Drinkers with Gaming Problems, and he is now a part of the Armchair Admirals and Generals group. He's a British Royal Navy veteran who now works with the I guess it's the UK Coast Guard. I don't know if they have a formal service or if it's more like a civilian thing, but that he did full-fledged service Navy, and now he basically runs search and rescue operations for the UK's equivalent of the Coast Guard, which is really cool. And we also have Kale Katarn, who not a content creator, but an active member within our community, within and follower of Armchair Admirals and Generals. Really good guy, and he's a like 20-year Air Force veteran, and basically the equivalent of a mechanic for the Air Force, and has worked on a bunch of different airframes, from fixed wing, which is planes, to rotary wing, which is helicopters, and now he's branching out and going into cyber support, so like the information technology side of the Air Force. So looking forward to picking his brain more about that as well. But also another really great resource when it comes to the function and maintenance of vehicles.
I
The
wonder if
aircraft.
that includes drones.
Yeah, well, we'll see how much he can divulge. Based off of what's
Well, if it, like
privileged and
because
everything.
me and like my brain how it relates to things, but drones and Star Citizen have a very tied history and future. So
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah,
drones now, well, military drones now, and drones and Star Citizen have a common gene.
yep.
So
And I've also recruited, if you may not be familiar, but he's a Twitch partner, Sergeant Tickles, who is a Air Force veteran, deployed to Afghanistan, and he was basically a door gunner on the way I understand it from what he explained to me, and he'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, is that he was a door gunner on what the Air Force calls a pavehawk, which what the Air Force uses for their PJs, their combat search and rescue people. So he was a door gunner on a combat search and rescue Black Hawk, essentially. Damn loud. Are we loud? I don't think we're
sounds
loud.
good to
Look up.
me.
Anyway, but yeah. So oh yeah, Pavehawks are super loud. Yeah, but very
Wow.
capable aircraft. But also, another Air Force veteran, with a different experience, but a pretty prominent content creator in the Star Citizen community. So looking forward to talking to him. And then also, the last person that I've recruited, his name in Discord is Solis, but he just started the Beyond the Verse podcast. And so if you're watching right now with us live, or if you're watching this later on YouTube, actually, Blizzrad, you're probably not in chat right now. Once we get started with the Roadmap Roundup, I'll put a link in chat. But he just started the Beyond the Verse podcast, and his format is really great. I really like his format. Super nice guy, and he's doing a really good job with his podcast. Just starting to get it off the ground. But he was a let's see if I can recall this correctly. He was in it was in the army. I think he's full on retired now. But he was an 18 Alpha, which means he was the officer in charge of a special operations detachment. Basically, the Army Special Forces. He was an officer in charge of one of their teams. So a lot of really incredible experience across the board from everybody that we're bringing into Armchair Admirals and Generals. And the goal is to have an episode once a month when Nazeris and I do our bye week, like we did last week. But depending on the topic, let and who's available, have 3 up to 4 people on the podcast to talk about that topic, but then the whole think tank, it basically works on the working document that we develop in the background, which is a much, I would say, a more simplified version of what Nazeris and I do when we do our deep dives. It's more just getting some thoughts out there, and sharing some ideas and a few little resources, versus when Nazeris and I do a scanner anomaly or a spectrum pulse. It is many pages long of every citation we can find regarding it, as well as our thoughts incorporated into it, whereas this is a bit more casual. So yeah, pretty excited about where that's going. And part of the reason I was able to recruit those really motivated and pretty very knowledgeable people into the project is because of what just came up in chat with the Moobot. Is because everything I do, if you're not aware on this podcast, goes towards charity. And so if you watch an ad, if you subscribe, if you that money goes to me and I donate it to charity. If you want to donate directly, you can click on. And actually, for some reason, it didn't do the follow-up one. It's supposed to have two. There's supposed to be two things that Moobot does. So, ! Charity. There we go. Cool. I don't know why that didn't pop up. It's supposed to do it automatically. But anyway, so, or you can click on the link and then donate directly through there, or, in there's a little tab thing, I think, to the left of chat if you're on your computer watching, and there's a thing that you can do through Twitch, and all those things will go to stackup.org, which is an organization that connects veterans and active duty members of the military who are deployed and away from their families with video games and video game communities to help them deal with PTSD as well as the separation from their support groups back home. So it's something that I believe in. It's something that my partners on Armchair Admirals and Generals believe in, and that's I do this because it's a fun hobby and I get to hang out with Nazeris and the other guys, and talk about stuff that we enjoy. But I also do it because it's a way to raise money for a cause that I firmly believe in. So if you want to support the cause, hang out with Nazeris and I, watch the video on videos on YouTube, hang out with the Armchair Admirals and Generals crew on the podcast there, watch those videos. It all goes towards stackup.org. So if you like what we do and you want to see more of it, donate to stackup.org. So, and we are at, the goal for this year is to raise $1,000 to sponsor what StackUp calls a, I always brain fart about the name. It's where they send like a big old gaming gift package, to a veteran or a service member in need. And I want to sponsor one.
The air assaults?
The air assault is the big one. That's the
supply crates then.
I think it's supply crates. I think that's what I always brain fart about which one's which, because there's air assaults, there's supply crates, and there's like a third thing too, which is like supply crate but bigger for like a group, like a whole unit. So yeah. But anyway, so yeah, that's what we got going on, and I think now we can go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes of the podcast. And of course, once this gets uploaded, there will be the little chapters on YouTube. We'll also break it up in the segments into individual videos on YouTube to watch later. So if you can't stick around for the whole stream, you can always catch up on it later. And so let me get, let's see, studio mode and that. And okay. And that should be good to go. All right. Transition in, Mike Lansing, supply crates, video game care packages full of the latest games, gear, and consoles sent to deployed units and veterans in need. Awesome. Thanks, dude. Appreciate that. And transition.
Which means not Star Citizen, right?
Yeah. 3,
Released
2,
games.
1. All right. And
okay.
Yep, we have transitioned, and I've got the Roadmap Roundup up on the screen. Nazeris, if you will take it away from here for a bit so I can finish eating my dinner.
All right. So, as we do with everything we read directly from CIG, I always like to read the header because it tells us, and by us we mean all of us here, what the purpose of what we're about to read is. So, it says, Happy Wednesday, everyone. Every 2 weeks, we accompany the Roadmap update with a brief explanatory note to give you insight into the decision-making that led to any changes. This is part of an effort to make our communications more transparent, more specific, and more insightful for all of you who help make Star Citizen and Squadron 42 possible. With all that said, let's go ahead and dive into this week's Roadmap Roundup, the CIG community team. All right, so notable changes for April 5th, 2023. And we're going to start off with Beam Citizen. but better this time. Beam System 2.0 tractor beams attach and detach. This iteration of the tractor beam gameplay will add functionality to tractor beam attachment and of the multi-tool, allowing it to detach items and attach items from ship item ports. This functionality can either be used for component exchange, replacement, or restock rockets, or scavenge other ships. This neither of us was expecting this soon.
Not at all. No, when that showed up on ISC, I was like,
Yeah,
wait, what?
we were I don't know if you were thinking post 4.0, but I was thinking like post 4.0. Like it's a thing they'll get to eventually, like modularity kind of like scale. And then they're like, "Oh, by the way, you can take items off of ships now." And they even showed, I don't know if it's going to be in the initial release, but they even showed it working with internal components like coolers and power plants. Um there's only a couple seconds of that, but they did make sure to show weapons can be removed, rockets can be removed and placed on ships. So rockets are the only thing currently that we can restock at the moment. But it does say replacement. So we can replace guns, we can steal guns off of salvage or liberate them, salvage them. Um so any external components, it seems to be easy. It and they did also talk about upping the lift height, not lift height, but lift strength of the multi-tool. Wow, we're still in this weird interim where the tractor beam tech really hasn't made it in, and the industrial tractor beam's not in yet. So the multi-tool tractor beam will have a bit more lift power in 319.
Yeah, that's the biggest question for me. Is they said that the multi tool will be able to attach and detach size 0 through size 2 components, and then basically any weapon. And that includes up to, I think there's the size 5s that are in game
Oh wow.
right now. And so we don't know. They have not decided, and I think this is going to just be more testing and balancing, especially once they get the two
There are
handed.
two missions I want to try with this.
Yeah. But yeah, figuring out where they want that cutoff point to be as far as mass and size, because they keep referring back to mass and size, because you could have something that's lightweight but has a lot of, dimensions
Mm-hmm.
wise is bigger. And so I think there's going to be a aspect of both into it. And so they did specify that the multi-tool is getting buffed, and isn't going to be behaving in what they see as a realistic fashion. But they did say that the components that are in game. So if you can open a hatch and the component is there, you'll be able to pull that out.
Okay. Cool.
And the other thing though is, there we know that they're working on redoing the or updating, I guess you'd say, the freelancer. I don't know if they.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming they mean the entire series, but updating the freelancer to have components. So my question is, if they're doing the freelancer, are they doing other ships that they aren't talking about in the monthly report? Because there have been plenty of things that have gotten done as part of like the miscellaneous sprints, the bug fixing and tech debt sprints that were not mentioned in the monthly reports, that weren't really shown hardly at all, and just fall under those sprints. So there could
Uh,
be
uh,
a number of ships that are getting components or additional components that weren't there prior added to them as part of 319. So it'll be really interesting to see how this develops, to see how many ships we're able to salvage not only weapons from, but things on the inside, the components.
Yeah.
Because that's the salvage that I've always been interested in. Was you find a derelict either in space or on the ground, and EVAing or walking out there and pulling off weapons and components, in order to put those on your ship and take them back and sell them or use them yourself. And then the only thing left for me for what is my dream of the part of salvage I'm most interested in, would be the lockers, and being able to, okay, well, this ship crashed and this person abandoned it here, or they died or what have you, but they had all these belongings and supplies, not only in crates but in the different storage lockers on the ship, and being able to open those and take the inventory from those as well. That's the the salvage that I'm very much, as interested as I am in, helping someone in a crew with their reclaimer, doing hole stripping and munching. It's the loot goblin in me that is very excited about this, especially when we get the bigger tools, and more things within ships to be able to loot.
Absolutely. Lockable containers. Where are lockers? Player. Oh, it's been done since March. Interesting. Player interaction T1. Lockers in inventory. No, that was the first one done. That was done in November. Interesting. Interesting. Right. All right.
Bingo Winchester says
So,
rockets
somebody
or
asked-
missiles, and I think they say rockets, but I think they mean all.
I think it's not rockets because rockets are very specific, and that I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure they take ammo like guns do, not like missiles do.
They showed missiles in the game, and
Yes,
the
missiles and
missiles
torpedoes are yes. Bombs and rockets, specifically rockets, we don't know yet.
Yeah,
Uh,
like in the rocket pods or the rocket turret.
Mhm.
Yeah,
the two missions I want to try specifically when this comes out is the October Rising missions because there's guns on it,
which one is that
and
one?
the Reclaimer Derelict
Mm.
with the I think it's only on space. The space Reclaimer taken over by squatters, basically. Trashy interior. Anyway, see if I can rip stuff off of that, and also the 890 boarding mission. If I can power it up and open up the turrets of the 890 and take the turrets off, or take the guns off of that, plus the 300 in the cargo bay. Basically, I'm trying to think of ways to farm guns. It's a terrible thing. All right. So next on the list is the new player experience for people who been playing Star Citizen for a while. They probably don't care about this much, but you should care about it because it helps introduce new people and does a lot of work that is asked of the people who know the game more. And hopefully, this will make it so people who know the game don't have to do as much work to get people just to get to a different place. So, it says an initiative for improving the initial first 30 minutes gameplay experience, which will help players understand the context of the world and introduce them to some of Star Citizen's basic features. This update focuses on the experience in Area 18 and Bikini Point. So they should get them into from their apartment, possibly some inventory stuff, to the space station, up to Bikini Point, possibly even a mission. Like, hey, we sent you a mission. Go here to get the mission, kind of thing. I would imagine it would cover getting to your ship, opening the inventory, a lot of key bindings, how to pilot your ship, take missions, and that way they have the framework to expand into everything that Star Citizen does. It would be nice if they sent them on a hand mining mission. It'd be really nice if they did that. Or a box mission, hand mining or box mission. I think that they should give them an option. Hey, we have these two missions for you to do. Pick one and go do. That way they can go do and come back and have been started in the missioning in Star Citizen. Anything for that one?
Yeah, with the new player experience. So I'm sure pretty much everybody who watches this watches the Astropub Captain Sable office hours, and so I forget who Paul had on when they were talking about the new player experience, and I apologize for forgetting, but they were talking about do you think this is the right time? And they were like, no, it's not the right time. Things are still changing, blah blah blah. And I was like, no, I disagree because I think it is exactly the right time because they're just doing the first one. And if you think about how CIG develops things, they build one of something in order to, test it out, in order to figure out the workflow, in order to get it into our hands so that we can provide feedback, and then they iterate on it, and they take that feedback and they continue to work on their workflow in order to incorporate it in order to do more of them.
Yeah.
And they're just doing, this is just, pardon me, it's a good beer. It's just Area 18 and by Genie Point. So they're just doing this one in order for us to give them feedback on it and for us to find the bugs, and think about what else they need to add or change before they go and add them to the other landing zones. You don't want the CIG doesn't want to put all that effort into doing it for, New Babbage and Port Tressler, and Orison and whatever the new Port Olisar is going to be, and so on. They don't want to do all that work and then have to redo all that work if the feedback and the process that processes from the Area 18 and Arcor one, they need to have that in order to incorporate it. And so they do it a limited run, and that way when they do the next ones, they'll be able to incorporate that feedback and they'll be able to do it faster, and they won't have to redo so much work. They won't create tech debt. And they're doing this because they one thing that was mentioned is they talked about how things are still changing. It's like, no, not that. The first 30 minutes, that's not changing. Like the being able, like what the description right here, an initiative for improving the initial first 30 minutes gameplay experience, which will help players understand the context of the world and introduce them to some of Star Citizen's basic features. This update focuses on the experience in Area 18 by Genie Point. All you're doing is figuring out your inventory, figuring out how to get out of your hab, make your way through the landing zone to the spaceport, get your ship, get it out of the hangar, and fly up to Baijini Point. And maybe from there, you'll get a introductory mission. Who knows? But very limited. It's a very limited tutorial, and nothing in that first 30 minutes is going to change. From where we are now. And most of it hasn't changed in years.
And most of it's key bindings.
Yeah, and most of it's just key bindings, and as long as the key binding part is just text, if they have voice acting or whatever, okay, now raise your landing gear, and then text pops up and it just says whatever the key binding you have it plugged in is, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But the way you raise your landing gear, the way you turn on your engines. The basic maneuvering for people who are doing keyboard and mouse, like all that movement stuff, none of that stuff has changed for years, except for a few little, turning on your lights, so that stuff isn't going to change. But being able to, one of the biggest gripes is new players have a hard time figuring out just how to get out of the damn hab, let alone find how to get to where their ship is and then get their ship out of the hangar and where to go from there.
Yep.
And if you can get some up to the space station, and you give them a little bit of guidance on takeoff and landing, that's the biggest part. If people know that, okay, I need to slow down, I got to watch my speed, they're not going to, they'll learn, the tutorial just told you can't, on the next box mission, you'll know that you need to slow down. You need to put down. You need to make sure you're oriented appropriately. You need to put your landing gear down because the game just told you, but that part hasn't changed. And then the rest, there's going to be more tutorials from there, and they'll have to figure that out. But yeah, it's now is the right time because they gotta build the other ones too, in advance of 4.0 and server meshing
and beta.
Yeah.
I imagine there will be tutorial storylines kind of thing. Like once you do the first 30, this is far release candidate kind of down the road. But after you do those 30 minutes, and I just wanted to preface, if you want to know how insignificant these things are going to be, go into Star Citizen and do your darndest to get out of the spaceport or a landing zone to a station in 30 minutes and see how much stuff you can actually get done in 30 minutes. In Star Citizen, it is not a lot. You basically get to the space station, and that is your 30-minute mark. It is because of how much simulation there is in Star Citizen, 30 minutes is not a lot of time. So there's not going to be a ton of stuff. And they're probably doing some form of dynamicness in it that they won't have to redo a bunch of stuff. Anyway, I digress. I was saying something about release candidate. Something. But hopefully there'll be tutorial chains afterward. So the first 30 minutes that we're getting in 319 is kind of like your the first step. And then after once we get a little more down the road, a little more reputation involved, a couple more companies actually building out missions, then we'll get, oh, here's Shubin wants to teach you how to mine. So you take the miner tutorial mission chain and it will say, okay, since you're a new recruit, we're going to start you off with a hand miner. Go here for your equipment. You go to a Shubin facility, pick up your equipment, go search for minables on whatever place. And you get enough reputation, and you rank up, and you get better and better. Maybe even get a, what's it called? Business car. What are the business cars called? There's a word for it. Anyway.
Car?
Yeah, when the business provides the car. Company car. You get a company car prospector. And then maybe like once NPCs work fun enough, you get to be a part of an NPC crew mole. So this is just the seeds, just the beginning seeds. And this like Tree said, like this is just one. It is almost nothing. It's mostly text, mostly key bindings, and then we need to know this. They need to know this so that they can copy paste it onto the 4 other planets and to see where it could be better now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something that I don't know how much I'm allowed to talk about it, but back a couple days talked with somebody and we were talking about what was it? Tree, you were there. What were we talking about?
I don't know. There's been a lot
servers.
of conversations.
Should they focus on making the servers better or focus on bug fixing? Should the live servers be bug free or should the live servers also be testing? And this actually falls into my kind of what I was saying, which was make the live servers the kid gloves. Nothing's going to happen to you, you poor pleb. Whereas the PTU is okay. We don't have kid gloves here. We lost them somewhere in the bugs. So, I'm not saying they're going to turn the live servers into production ready kind of servers. It doesn't seem like they're going to go that way with how they've been rolling out 318. I'm just saying this is kind of leaning towards getting Star Citizen ready for, at the very least, a beta. And when I say beta, if you go back, I'm pretty sure we actually did a show on this. I think it was also a bit in the Journey to 100 Star Systems. Server meshing, so Dynamic V2 server meshing, is the last big technical hurdle for Star Citizen. Full stop. Yep. Last big technical hurdle. After that is done, Alpha is basically done. Beta is where you polish the game. So they have always said they're going to continue to add things into Infinitum. So if ships and missions and professions in the game are stuff they add later, let's say we're 20 years after release, they come up with some new mission type to do or career to do, like bunny farming or something, who knows, then that would mean that cargo hauling or bounty hunter V2 or farming, overclocking, all of these things, crafting, base building, can be post-beta, which means they can call it beta without all the mission careers being in, without all the planets being in, without all the things that we would assume would be in it, but to get the name beta on it, on the project, to show the wide world that the project is indeed moving forward. So I'm not saying they are. I'm just saying I think it's possible that post 4.0 they call it beta, or post server meshing V2 is what I mean. When the branch of 4.0 is basically done, I think 5.0 is beta.
Yeah, I see yeah, they're working hard on quantum, and I think quantum is one of the pillars that, it wasn't really a thing when they were talking about this in 2018, 2019, but I think you could add it to it. But that's well into production, it's well underway. And, so if you think about it, server meshing, quantum, and the org, what would you call it for, integrating the org mechanics between the website and the game, permissions, all that stuff.
There's a name for that. I forget what the name is.
I forget what CR called it, but those are the things. Well, server meshing is in production, and I don't think, it won't see live this year, but I think there's a good chance it'll be, in Evo this year, and then just like, PES was in Evo this year, and or last year, live this year. I think the same thing will happen with server meshing. But then next year is polishing server meshing, working on their way to dynamic, just like they are polishing PES right now and will be for a lot of this year. And all along the road, they are building quantum, and we could be seeing more of that very soon. It is very apparent how diligently they're working on quantum and, that whole system. But then also
And
next year,
we already have it
could
in
be
game technically.
Oh yeah, we already have parts of it. There's just going to be a whole lot
Yeah.
more. But then next year, you could also see, coinciding with the ongoing development of server meshing, is the building of the org mechanics. And if as well as adding more gameplay elements that are the sort of core functions that they talk about for Star Citizen. Which means probably not next year, but the year after is looking like the time frame for beta. So it's the not too
I
distant
would even
future.
say a year after that. I wouldn't even go that. I'd say a year after that. I want
think it's
dynamic
within
server
the-
meshing V2 as hard and solid as possible
Yeah.
before they start calling it a beta.
Well, and
Like-
but that's the thing is, like, it just has to be in and working, and then they polish it. And I could,
Yeah.
it's, but that's the thing is they have talked very, compared to, they've talked about what it will do. They haven't talked, compared to how much they've talked about building server meshing, the initial portion. They haven't talked as much about the building process of going from static to dynamic, and that's the, Nazeris and I talked about it in our conversation with Space Tomato today. We were just did a segment with him for his 100th episode of his podcast this last weekend. So keep an eye out for that. But I called it the Bermuda Triangle because there's that gulf of, we don't know what that's going to look like going from static to dynamic, and so it's a bit of a no man's land. But yeah, it's it's going to be really interesting because they're also going to be continuing to develop features, and so yeah. Bingo Winchester says, "Do we need more than one star system?" Though, yes, absolutely, for variety. And
For beta? No.
we don't need it for beta,
Like-
but we will have 5 to 10 for beta.
Right.
That's always been
Need?
the plan.
No. Like,
Yeah.
to get to beta, you need almost nothing in a project. You basically need one line of code for every direction you want the game to go. And then you can call it beta and add stuff later. It's stupidly simple. And that's just for, like, excessive technicalities. And
Yeah, let's,
most game companies don't use excessive technicalities.
Mm-hmm.
We've now spent an hour on two things, so...
Yeah.
New
Well,
mission
and we had
salvage
the
content.
intro and just talking about the channel and
Yeah.
your stuff and my stuff. So
Yeah, that took
but yeah,
us about 30 minutes.
new missions, salvage contracts.
I'm sad that the mining ones aren't going to make it in, but salvage
think-
missions.
Those will follow pretty closely though. But they've talked
If
about
it's
they're
not
waiting on
in-
other teams for stuff, and
If it's not-
I'm curious what that is.
Yeah, if it's not in 3.19.1, I don't know. I imagine it's close behind. I don't know where that sentence was going. I think it's close behind.
Oh,
Because if they're putting in profession-specific missions, then they have a framework to do so. And as they talked about, I forget, several weeks ago, when they talked about with the mission feature team, they have these very open-ended modules that they use. So when they build for salvage, they're probably going to be open enough to just say, well, you're not salvaging today, you're mining. and it works. So there's, I imagine, some hookups they need to do. So I imagine it will be very closely behind this. Anyway, it says, with more civilian access to salvage ships, contract brokers are offering salvage jobs for derelicts around the Grange points around Stanton. These brokers charge a fee for their service, so this will require some buy-in, but the contractors are free to keep any salvage materials for resale. So how this works is that kind of like it's kind of like an in between uh, mining and cargo as far as how expensive it is, I guess, for the player. With mining, you have your ship and you go mine a rock. It's basically free after you have the equipment. With cargo hauling, you have to pay to buy the cargo to go sell the cargo, or at least trading. Um, with salvage contracts, it's going to be you're buying the rights to your salvage thing. It's going to give you a marker saying that's the ship you now own. Go salvage it, and then
It's
you can
basically
go and
buying a salvage title like in real life.
yep, yep,
That's all that
and
it
you
is, and that it's meant to be tied into the quantum system eventually. And
yep.
the insurance system in game.
And I imagine in 319 this will go absolutely bonkers and then get nerfed into the ground in the following patches because it's going to be the new thing. Not only like this is probably going to be a lot of like you're going to make a lot of money doing this for the 319. I imagine there's going to be way more wrecks doing this just so they can get the analytics to know where everything is, how everything's doing, what percentage of the ship you're salvaging, kind of thing, and where people are going to get them. So for 319, get a salvage ship. New missions, Ghost Hollow PvP missions. These used to say PvPvE. I'm glad this doesn't say that anymore. Adding a new mission type to the Ghost Hollow point of interest in Stanton system, making use of the Comma Ray as well as AI Nav Mesh. This mission type will create PvP encounters where players will need to fight for control over terminals for a chance at a big credit payout. So that is super cool. So apparently, there will be AI there, but also it'll create, I imagine, if not a free for all, a at least two-sided mission,
Mm-hmm.
like lawful, unlawful. But I can imagine this being a free for all. Like, hey, somebody's doing something over here. Like basically when they touch the comm array, it just lights up Stanton. Like, hey, there's something going on here, or like this is going on here, kind of thing. Like there's like some material drop or whatever it is that is going to invite players to go here. I can imagine it being a free for all. I'm kind of here for that, even though I don't do much PvP.
I still have
It
a
keeps pirates out of my trade lanes.
I still have a lot of questions about how this is going to work and what their plan is, just because they have been very vague about it. I'm sure we're going to see it in ISC.
I
This
wouldn't
next
even be
quarter.
shocked if this was. Actually, I wouldn't be shocked if this was going to be an attempt at a not jump point jump, or not jump point, jump town, not jump town.
Yeah, yeah, just a different kind of thing. And the so Ghost Hollow is the Reclaimer one, right? I always get the names
Yep,
all
the
mixed
the
up.
downed reclaimer. Yeah,
So
October Rising is the space reclaimer. Ghost Hollow is the crashed reclaimer.
so the um, Ghost Hollow is one of the derelict settlements, and then
Hmm.
the 600i and MSR on Daymar is another derelict settlement.
Yes.
So the first derelict settlement was Ghost Hollow. That's now getting a custom mission for it. And then they built the second derelict settlement, and now they've gotten that workflow down to the point where, okay, we built one, and then another one that was even bigger and better, and then we don't know, not for 319, but probably 320. They're adding 15 more. So in the same amount of time that it took them to build Ghost Hollow, that it took them to build the second one that's on Daymar, and I forget the name of that, they're now able to build 15. So that's an order of magnitude and a half, with the same amount of people, actually less people, is what they talked about when Montreal was on SCL. So if you think about that, that's pretty impressive work with it, for the first iteration on the first implementation of the derelict settlements with the procedural locations tool. And that's what the procedural locations tool is used to build derelict settlements. The Rastar builds not only the outposts that you've seen, them building in Pyro for the last 2 years, but Rastar is also used to build the derelict outposts. And derelict outposts are separate or different than derelict settlements, and that's the confusing thing is the language. They both say derelict. What's the difference? Well, one is a derelict is a settlement around derelict spaceships. The other one is an outpost that is now derelict. And so we're supposed to be seeing a lot more. We have a lot more derelict outposts as well, because the workflow for that with Rastar tool has also improved. So the they are getting really good at filling out these star systems, and Nazeris and I have talked about this multiple times. This is just the smallest tip of the iceberg when it comes to points of interest. It's about to get not.
Yeah.
I say it's about to, but like in the next, over the next several months, year or two, it's going to get wild with the underground facilities, with asteroid facilities, with
building interiors,
with
outposts, derelict outpost planets, star systems.
The
rocks.
Space stations in Pyro, adding more space stations probably to Stanton, at the jump points. It's going to get crazy. The biggest thing has been server capacity. And not only is PES helping with that server capacity, but they're going to be adding in server meshing. And now then you're going to double, if not quadruple, the capacity for locations within a server's area that it's responsible for.
Yep.
Northern Trooper asks, will the ship maps work with derelict ships? The system that they're building is meant to be, the one they showed off at CitizenCon, is meant to be. Procedural
Dynamic.
wouldn't be the word, but yeah, dynamic. Very good, thank you.
Yeah.
In that, you send out a ping, and it will read things that it understands, and give you feedback, and so that way they don't have to create a map for anything.
It also uses the geometry of the ship you're in. With the Idris demo they showed with the interior map of the Idris, it was they took the Idris mesh and basically gave Aegis its own callouts. This is a door. This is a cargo area markout, table, whatnot. Whatever the things they want to show up on the map. It's basically anything that has those in it from Aegis. So just like they have the Aegis door that they can just, okay, this is an Aegis ship, has an Aegis door in it. So they have the kit bash they can do. That now is dynamic and works on all Aegis ships. Just full stock. Would that just be able to translate straight to derelicts? That depends on their process of making derelicts. Yes, they start with the finished ship, but do they have a way to take the now broken ship layout and represent that in the map?
It's able to see the geometry, within an area.
Well, is it baked or not is the question. Did they take the geometry, bake it into the map, so it didn't have to call it every time you won't open the map, basically? That is question for their optimization and engine team.
Yeah.
We will figure that out when we get the map.
It should be able to work for anywhere, regardless of where you go. But you only be able to see what's in the immediate area depending on what you're equipped with. So if you have like a small, Paul talks about it in his stream all the time. Your character and what you're equipped with, is going to be a ship, and just like ships have a radar, you and your armor and your helmet and everything are going to have the ability to have sort of a radar around you to understand the terrain, and the objects in the area around you, but with a limited information set based off of what you can see and what it can process. Yeah.
Yeah. And the Starfarer is getting a rework on the interior. Chill out.
Yep.
But like, even if it doesn't work on specifically broken ships, you're they will still have the interior map of a Starfarer. You'll still be able to pull up the Starfarer map. I
I think it's
assume.
just going to
I
be
should put that
dynamic
on there.
based off of scanning geometry around you. Because the way they showed it with the Idris is almost like it
That
was
would be
scanning pulse.
nice,
Because
but I'm pretty sure that was just graphics. I'm pretty sure that was just graphics. That
you
was a
can't just
baked
have it
mesh.
for. But yeah, but you're going to. No, I honestly think it's going to be just a scan of geometry in an immediate area, and they were using the Idris as an example, but because you're also going to need it for if you're on a planet and scanning the terrain around you, because you can do that. They do it dynamically with the ping from your ship right now, showing terrain, and so if they can use that to make a map, but the when you ping, it recognizes the here's the geometry, but also here are the things with these um, like you were talking about with the doors, and stuff, things that it recognizes.
Mm.
It can generate a map. So it will. It's basically like your little personal radar. Certain areas will have a map where if you walk into that area, there is a map that was built, procedurally for using that system, but then added to by some designer and everything. But if you're just walking around in the world or you go find a random cave, okay, well you'll be able to ping and you'll be able to see part of the cave, within a certain range, and rocks, and maybe if you ping and it sees things that it recognizes based off of little, the tag system, you'll see that on there, uh, within reason. But I don't think it's I don't think they're going to limit us in that you won't have a mini map around you showing you anything unless you are in a known location, with known entities.
We
Um,
shall see.
yeah. Let's
And the last one on our list is Lorville Seascape, the rework of the Lorville skyline to fit better the scale, or to fit the scale of the city and its distinctive buildings. So this is one because it needed a facelift. Two because getting ready for building interiors. I imagine Hurston's going to be the first place to get it, just because it was purpose built for it now.
Yep.
Um, and this is coming in 319. So that is all stuff that is in 319. And I believe if I just go over to the release view here, everything in there is committed already. So everything we just talked about is already committed, is locked in for 319. The only thing on the 319 entire slate that's not locked in is the Lynx rover, and that ships always end up getting locked in rather late in the process, just because they want to polish as much as possible before they have to kick it out the door. Also, it's probably a release for Invictus, which means it will show up at Invictus anyway, which is not till the second week of May. So they got a little bit of time to do whatever they need to do. But we haven't heard of this getting delayed any, and they really, 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 really don't want to delay it because Invictus is built into 319. Um, so they need to get 319 out for the second week of May. They are currently testing two different versions of 318 on PTU.
Mm-hmm.
319, 318.1 and 318.2 are both switching places in the PTU. So depending on what they're trying to test, it'll be a 318.1 build prioritized that day or a 318.2 patch. These both have to be done and launched before the second week of May. They have 4 weeks to get 2 patches out. I hope they get it. Holy crap. All right, so we're
Not a
moving
good
over
word.
to ShinyTracker now.
Before we do that, I just wanted to say I
Yes.
think it's so these things, all of these things that are in blue right now, are committed, and they were committed last week. That is over 6 weeks in advance of when 319 would release, if it's going to be for Invictus launch week. That's pretty impressive as far as patches go for Star Citizen, having things committed that far in advance. And that's because 319 is basically 318.3 is what it's going to be. It's going to be these things plus we're probably going to see more of these next couple roundups of things getting added to that are getting their go no go over this next month. But it's going to have these things added, as part of the patch along with Invictus Launch Week, and then the fixes that they are developing for 318.1 and 318.2. And so everybody's like, oh, well, they got to get 318.1 and 318.2 out so they have time to test 319. 318.1 and 318.2 are just limited things that they are fixing that have to do with the back end and player accounts. And so they don't have to be, those patches don't have to be out to live for any period of time other than just, a weekend before they can move on to the next one. It's not going to inhibit 319's development, especially because 319 is just 318 with those fixes
it's
and a few
basically a
new
content
features.
patch.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it's basically a content patch.
yeah, you don't need the same level of QA time and prep time that you would normally have on a patch, prior to 318 to get 319 out, just because everything has the foundation that 319 is built on is already been proven out, and so, but that's why they're doing it that way. So that way, Invictus Launch Week has, everything for 318 in it, a few new things, and then the big fixes that allow for 318 to be, for PES to be stable and for accounts to work ahead of a free fly in Invictus Launch Week. So that's why they're doing that, and I don't think it's too big of an ask, for them to get that done at all. So yeah, ShinyTracker reports. Let's start with the progress tracker. I've got that up on screen. Are you looking at it too?
I am, and who was it that said it? Northern Tribus said, what, hacking and Hex finished upstream sprint, question mark? Yes. However, one, just because bars are done doesn't mean the feature's done. Two, hacking is being developed for Squadron first, which means they are making sure it is a complete gameplay ability instead of like, oh yes, you can hack doors now. What doors can use it? The one on the back of a freelancer, right? Just that one. So when hacking does eventually come over to PU, it will be mature enough to actually use it in places we need it, and probably at this point in missions. So even though the bar is done, doesn't mean it's done. And if it is done, as far as the feature work goes, it'll still mature in Squadron 42 because they have a much bigger test bed there. It's a much fuller game. And then they can bring it a full state over to the persistent universe. And Hex is a feature for player, relation, and developers to view and manipulate real-time data from microservices in the mesh. So that's kind of not important. I'm sure that is important. Actually, I would love, Jared, I know you probably don't watch these, but could we have a segment on Hex, please? I would love to know like what they're going to what they want it for, what they need it for, and why it showed up on the progress tracker. Because as much as the progress tracker is a roadmap of all things that Star Citizen is doing, it is a player facing roadmap. This is a sterilized version of their internal, yes, but why is that there? There are reasons I can think of for needing Hex. One, being able to track hacking people. Being able to fix people's accounts without needing to reset or to reset the entire game. Like the several things I could imagine, but I just would like to know what they're thinking, what the developers are thinking for this tool. So yes, good eye there. Deliverables, there's only 6.
Yeah,
Now all
on the Delta report, this one's has a bit more to it, but it's still interesting. I think the Apoa Santak Yai. So everybody's like, oh, it got extended, it got delayed. It's like, no, that they just they're in gray box, but they are in gray box. They're working on animations, but they know that they're going to need to continue to work on this not only to make it look good, but they're also going to have to integrate all the work from I forget which team is the one that's doing all the new thruster tech. So this ship will not release without that new thruster tech. And so they are incorporating how long that the development of that and the testing of that is into the work that they're going to be doing on it. So
And it also extended a quarter, which means that was prescribed that wasn't not necessarily it being delayed, but it was just not there yet. So the schedule came in to the was it 09/23. So
yep.
it's a ship, it's being worked on. Speaking of ships being worked on, I'm gonna go on a tangent here. Where is it? The Polaris has unofficially, I'm going to call it unofficially because it's only because the roadmap says, started development.
Yep.
Everyone rejoice. Currently, it's only 24 weeks. This will probably go on for 6 months at the least.
Oh, gosh,
but it started in the second week of, I said at least, second week of April. So it says just start off like this week. If I just go over to here, ShinyTracker, scheduled deliverables, give Polaris, that's Control S, not Control F. Polaris, that just started work. Yeah, just started work like within the past couple days. But I felt like I wanted to say that, so there we go. Polaris is now tentatively in active development. I'm happy. All right, Reno Commander Classic Race Mode Overhaul. Date got extended from 12/22 to 03/23, which is still in the past. So, yay. I guess they got stuff done and it was not marked as done, and now it is. Good job, guys.
But then the next one, the bug fixing and tech debt, Arena Commander feature team, 74 days worth of work, 2 designers and 4 engineering devs. So they have a lot of stuff that they have to get caught up on to bring the Arena Commander module, the entire thing, up to snuff with the rest of the game. And then miscellaneous support, same thing.
Both of these are becoming like our favorite ones to pull out of here because, like, one of the good recent examples of stuff that falls into these two categories is when they did the C8R. Yeah, the C8R. They added an internal button touchpad to that version of the Pisces. Well, if they're adding it to that version, they might as well cross it over to the C8X and the whatever the not luxury white one is, whatever the gray one is. The C8. It's just C8. C8 and C8X. So when I got into the Pisces after the C8R came out, I was really weirded out because there's now a button there. That falls into these categories. Random like tweaks as they build out other ships. The Freelancer also falls into these with the gold standard stuff falls into here unless it's broken out into its own, this is a gold standard pass thing. But like little tweaks and things to bring it up to a new standard falls into tech debt, bug fixing, and miscellaneous support. I wish they would just squish them all together because they're basically all the same thing.
Yeah,
I'm sure they have different internal things for them, but they're basically all the same thing.
There are going to be a lot of things that we see on ISC, as well as changes that get put into patch notes, and as part of the Arena Commander module, the whole thing, that are going to come from all this work. And we won't know about it until Jared tells us about it or it's in the game, whether it's a PTU or live. And so that's a lot of work that's going to make that module a lot more interesting and a lot more playable, over the next couple months.
Really, I hope they break it out into its own executable and put it on consoles. Do it, cowards. Yep. They were talking about something Arena Commander wise, where it's going to be you launch into arcade mode kind of thing. I forget what the name was, and then it will be Flight or Star Marine. Do you remember what they were talking about?
I briefly, yes, and I'm actually going to talk about that as part of the scan anomaly.
Never mind. We'll get to that later.
Not in great detail, but it is a part of the scanner anomalies.
Well, we can talk about it when we get there, I guess. All right, next then. The Origin X1. How long? Hold on. I want to see. Is this how long is this even like going to be in development? Is this literally like a day's work? It
Oh,
is 2.5 months. It goes to September. It could take longer, but like it, you've seen the X1. Chat's seen the X1. This is like a point five, not point five. It's not that small, but it's like is it 5 meters ship?
it is
It's a
super
really
small.
small ship. Like it's where is it here? Where's Origin?
We'll pull it up on
Origin
PowerShell.
X1. It is 5.7 meters long. It is, other than like being super like sleek, this should not take time at all because
Yeah.
there's just not much to it.
And EU vehicle content did a little bit last year, and then they put it down at the end of March last year. Haven't touched it since. And US vehicle content is picking it up, but not until July of this year, and working on it until. So right now we only have the progress checker out to the end of Q3. We won't be getting. We should be getting getting upstream and downstream updates, starting with the next roadmap roundup, which is it's not this Wednesday, but the following, right? Wait, no,
Right.
yeah,
So to
following. So
19th.
the 19th. Yep.
So the
So that's when
19th we should begin Q4. Is that what you're saying?
the 19th is when we will the 19th, and the one following that is when we should be getting the upstream for Q4 and downstream for Q2
Ooh.
updates.
Okay.
Yeah,
Excite.
yeah, exactly. always a very exciting time for Nazeris and I. So this sprint right here is not going to stop right here. I almost
Right.
guarantee you this sprint is going to go into Q4, and all they did with this change is they just extended it from 623 to 925, and they just added a little bit more work. So we know it's going to, it's going to be IAE.
I mean,
X1's
I'm
coming out of
probably going to
IAE.
have an X1 either in game or on my account, minus the
Oh,
gun, because it's gonna
yeah.
be like, oh, I
It
need
is
to
giving Paula
travel
complex,
10 meters.
and
What?
it's
Okay,
I find
do
it
tell.
hysterical.
What does that mean?
Paul like literally has a stroke every time he talks about it.
Why?
It's his biggest pet peeve, and I totally get it because it's one of those things where there's no reason it should have been pushed back this far and should be this late in development when it's just a fucking hover bike.
Because the coffee vendor. I'm
Yeah.
convinced it's because the coffee vendor. Like not like okay. Okay. I know people will
Before
watch
you
this
go
and
on,
some people aren't
Cromtac just
exactly
subscribed
informed.
for 6 months.
Yes.
So Cromtac, thank you so much for subbing. I really appreciate it. Just a reminder to everyone: if you're like me and you hate commercials and you appreciate the content that Nazeris and I do, along with the Arbitrary Animals and Journals, you can subscribe. I don't take any of that money. That doesn't go to me. It doesn't buy me nice things. I take that money and I give it to Stack Up. So you can not have to deal with commercials at all and give to a good cause. So it's up to you. So oh 07 to Cromtac, thank you so much, buddy. Cromtac has also donated directly to Stack Up as well. So, and I don't get I get an email if somebody donates using the link that pops up in chat, and somebody donated $50 already to stackup.org. And I'm an
Nice.
idiot. I forgot to put the goals thing on this scene for OBS, so that's why you
Ah.
can't see it. But yeah, so we got another $50. We are just going gangbusters on our goal towards $1,000 this year. Yeah, and I'll be
You
getting
got
more
more than six
updates from
months
them.
still to go. So dang.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, well, and so the other thing is the goal, the money that shows at the top of chat is
Mm-hmm.
not accurate because that doesn't incorporate
Oh.
what is also donated via the link, and as well as my donations when I get payouts from Twitch. So
Okay.
that
So you're
goal at the
much
top of
closer even. Wow.
well, that goal at the top of chat is since October of last year. So I think you minus like 200 from that, but then you add like 400 something. So we're $600 plus and then some, and I'm getting another payout from Twitch here the next month or so. So we'll add another 100 on top
Nice.
of that. Yeah.
Amazing.
Unannounced
The
vehicle.
power of gaming. The power of
Yes.
amazing people. Yes, unannounced vehicle, probably another Invictus thing. Wait a minute, hold on, that's not till
Yeah.
07.
Well, and it's so unannounced vehicle.
Yeah,
End
okay,
date
so
extended to the end of July, so they added a month with vehicle content US. A lot of devs working on it.
it's
Not a ton of
definitely a
tasks.
finishing ship though.
Yeah, the so I think in Q3 is when we'll see the downstream. So we'll get Q2 with this next update, and then when we get the update for Q3 and we see the downstream teams, I think we'll see those. We'll either see some of them with this next update, for Q2 as well as going into Q3. We'll see some of the downstream teams doing that work because I think this is something that's going to be a um, a release in with 320, whenever that is. I'm
Right.
thinking
So back
320
on
is
my
going to be the Q3
soapbox
patch. Oh yeah, go for it. Sorry.
back to about the X1. Um, I'm pretty convinced that the X1, because it's so simple, because it's again Origin, it was held off to train more devs. One of the things they need for it to build bigger ships, better, faster, stronger, is more artists. So just like they saved the coffee vendor as a little side project for a new guy, X1 would be a perfect project for that. So they probably just said, well, we have our long-standing devs that have been here for 10 years and longer that could work on this ship, or we could just not make another hover bike. We have a hover bike. It's just a hover bike origin style. And we just wait till we need to train a dev on it or an artist on it, and we use that to train the dev. Ta-da! Easy training, easy tutorial. They get to know the engine, they get to know how it works and how to set up an entire ship. So I'm not saying that is how it works. I'm not saying that I have no insider information. I'm just saying it would make sense to me because I I can't say I can't excuse it being held back this long, um, without that being the reason. So okay, soapbox dead. We want to work on the human docs now.
So that unannounced vehicle. I'm looking. I have it pulled
Mm-hmm.
up on stream right now.
Yes.
The concept phase. So concept is not only 2D drawings, but then also building it into
It
going to
is
white
white
box.
box complete.
Yeah,
Whoa, that is long.
it's so this is the one I forgot. This is the one I've been watching. It's two artists from early February last year, going all the way to mid May this year. So that means that sometime the white box really was over the last several months finishing up white box in Q2, and then they're essentially handing it off to wrong one. Handing it off to the production teams during Q1 is when they start taking helping with the white box and going building it up into gray box. The question is though, if it's really big, 6 months is not a lot of time to build something from essentially white box through gray box through final art. 7 months really. Plus you'll have downstream teams probably starting around here going towards the end of here, but at the same time US vehicle content. So we go down to that unannounced, and here's that one right there. They have 3 disciplines. They have 3 artists, 1 designer, and 2 tech content. And the tech content is only this little bit right here. Usually, when tech content is working on something, it's something new or different that they're incorporating new gameplay mechanics into. But that's not a huge production team, so I don't know if I think that that's something all that big, but we'll see. Um, yeah. So let's
That
close those
is
tabs.
67 weeks of concept work.
I think that much concept
So,
work is something that's going to be somewhat fairly original, and something doing something
okay, so
new
here's
and
like a
different.
nice barometer. The Steve was 42 weeks with 2 artists.
Yeah,
So it
was it
doesn't
full
have to be
time?
big.
Yep. Is the
Yes,
Steve
yes,
sprint
yes,
full
yes.
time? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really hard to
Um,
gauge.
Very. The Mule was only 33 weeks, 2 artists. So it's a bigger vehicle that took less time. So 58 weeks part-time, 2 artists for the BMM. It is okay. So one of the things it does, I know at least one of the things that has reasons to change time-wise here is style guide. If the style guide is built out a lot, like MISC, you can build out a white box fairly quickly.
I'm
If
gonna
it's
grab another
not,
beer.
you have to spend a lot more time on a lot less ship. So basically that ends up in we have no idea the size of this ship.
Yeah, that's
But
the hard part
six
is, the that does seem like a very long concept period, but a lot of that, does go into the white box
Mhm.
aspect of it, which is a pretty sizable chunk of the construction of the ship, the construction period, the actual production part. Um, but the if it was really big, I would think that there would be a lot more people assigned over the production phase. But at the same time, that can change as well. They
Mhm.
could add more as that goes into production and people come available from other things, they could add those on there and it could see a lot more work. So it's too early to tell considering that it really just went into production, actual
Yeah.
production, not concept art, within the last quarter. So but it's also unannounced, and the other thing, and I think it was North End said RSI minor. Um, I don't think it would be the RSI minor because they're already working on it before that was a thing. Um, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's something RSI because really this is going to be the year of RSI, and they're also building the Polaris is going into production, and I
Lynx
wouldn't be
is coming
surprised if
out.
it's yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there's going to be more RSI going into production to go along with that. Um,
Yeah, we
so yeah,
just got
let's
the Scorpius, getting the Lynx in a couple weeks. Players
yeah.
just went into production. Tis the year of our side. Hopefully
Well,
next. Well, I
and
guess Misk
they
is like all through it because
but they also concepted the galaxy, and
yes, also the Galaxy.
yeah. Um, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see what those it's always fun to follow unannounced and speculate about what they are, you know, um, and I think it's probably going to be something relevant to gameplay, but we don't know what that gameplay is. I'm thinking salvage. I think we're going to see more salvage. I want to see an Argo salvager, but that's just me.
The Galaxy is definitely not being worked on.
No, yeah, the Galaxy's announced, so it is not in production. Here we'll progress tracker
It has not been
deliverables.
being worked on since August of last year.
Yep. Yeah. So this was the Galaxy's concept phase, just this, um, and they may not
Wild.
have done very much for the white box for the Galaxy. It could have been a very limited white box because it wasn't going directly into production. Very very rough white box.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
the goal of the concept to Whitebox is just to make sure that when they go to production, they don't have to rework any metrics, the hallways all fit, and most
Yeah.
importantly, everything the ship needs to do is figured out and
Mm-hmm.
fits inside of the exterior.
Yeah.
Unlike the Polaris, the BMM, literally everything that they've made pre 2017. Um, so the reason they have this concept art into early white box is just to make sure everything fits nicely and the hallways are where they need to be. All the components are in a spot. After they get
Um,
that and then they check it all off, that's all the work they need to do.
so yeah,
I
the
think you're muted. Okay.
The Montreal ship team has not even started yet. They haven't even hired for that team yet. That announcement for that guy was, "Hey, you're going to lead this team, you have to build it. So he still has to, we don't know where he's at as far as moving and them starting taking applications and all that. I would have to look and see what jobs are available on the Turbulent website, but it'll be a while before we start seeing the results of that ship team. But that's another thing that we're also going to mention as part of the scanner anomaly, but partly briefly. The Stop and Sniffer, the work on the Galaxies was enough for it to get into a Super Bowl commercial. That was
Yep.
so funny. Oh my gosh, I was rolling at that.
Can somebody find that for me? I couldn't find it.
It was a Mexican news station. Northern Trooper says, be nice if they color coded the bars, dark red equals constant phase. There are so many things that Jake wants to do with the progress tracker in order to help it show more information. He wants it to show the things that the ShinyTracker does. Jake, wants to put Shiny Hobo out of business, not for malice, but just because, the information is there. It's in the
I
back
would not
end
be shocked if Shiny Hobo eventually
it.
gets a job.
They just don't have the anyone from the Montreal team that does all the website stuff that built this. They don't have anyone available right now to work on this to add those features so that it does show more detail. Because people always complain that it doesn't show progress. Well, if you look at these things like on this, it does show progress. It shows you progress on okay, we're at this point, there have this many tasks scheduled as part of this series of scheduled sprints. It does show you progress, but all that data is not, visible on this front end of the progress tracker. But that data is available, and so that's something that Jake, absolutely really wants to get done, and it'll happen eventually. It just, isn't a priority right now because they have to rebuild the whole not the whole thing, but a lot of the website is still getting refactored to be up to snuff.
Interestingly enough, there are no artists, like 3D artists, jobs for Turbulent.
Yeah, I mean, they're just getting started, so I don't think we'll even see them start working on something because they have to get hired and start training. We're not going to see that team doing anything.
I wonder if
until
also they're going to
the second half of this year. Using
Yeah, I wonder if they're going to save it for specifically local talent. Because that's the reason why it's in Montreal is for the local talent.
Yeah, there's a lot of developers, in Montreal.
Yeah.
CIG is very much trying to poach people from Ubisoft.
Yeah. All your favorite big AAA companies have an office in Montreal, so there's talent there for sure. Like Ubisoft, the other one that did the thing. I know Square Enix has one. I know Sony's got a couple in there. EA had some studios up there. I don't know if any of them still exist.
Yeah, I don't know if they had an EA studio or just contracted studios there, but there's a reason that
Gremlin Studios.
Turbulent is in Montreal and that CIG partnered with them, and we'll talk more about that as well.
What's the other purple one? There's Ubisoft and...
Oh gosh, I don't know.
There's another purple one. I don't know why I'm seeing purple.
Let's get through this scheduled deliverables report real quick, and then we'll get on to the scanner anomaly. And so we're just going to scroll through these, and we'll look at the things that are continuing to be worked on. So that's the using the scheduled deliverables report is a good way to show you what is actually actively being worked on right now, because everything on the progress tracker, even though there might be a, let's go back to deliverables and right now you could scroll through here and see that there's a bunch of sprints that are going through here, but that doesn't mean they're actively being worked on. There could be for artificial gravity, the work, the most recent sprint could have ended here in February, and they're not picking it back up until May, and there's a gap, but it doesn't show that. That's why so many things on the sprints and the deliverables that show, oh my gosh, it took them 53 weeks, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's because it doesn't show gaps, and so it artificially inflates the amount of time that something is being worked on, because it doesn't show gaps in sprints in scheduled work. Uh,
Ooh,
oh yeah, CAG
Quantic.
had it taken down. Yeah, it was pretty dang funny.
What one?
The video they're
Oh
talking about in chat.
darn.
Thanks for sharing that stop
So
and stuff.
yes, there
Appreciate
are.
it.
So Motive is still there by EA, and Quantic Dream is in Montreal. I forget what Typhoon does, but Red Factor. There's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of them. There's
Hmm.
apparently, was it 50 something or other? Different studios
Yeah.
there. Amazon, Warner Brothers, Unity. A
But the
lot of
other thing to
guys. A lot of guys.
take into consideration when looking at the scheduled deliverables is you have to look at the teams that are have their scheduled work, and they're scheduled through X point. But then you need to look at, okay, is Montreal Sandbox an upstream team or a downstream team? So you can't look at this and be like, oh, okay, that's when they're going to be done with that work. That's just how far out the schedule goes on the progress tracker and the data that they have. So it's good to keep track of what's being worked on as we speak, you know, and then relate it to, okay, these teams, what teams are working on it when, in order to get sort of an idea, a vague idea of how far along something is in production, especially when you correlate that with the monthly reports, sometimes on ISC. But it's otherwise, you can't use it to predict when something will be done. But it's interesting to see what is actively being worked on in order to see what CIG's priorities are. So you've got actor status tier 2, which the actor feature team, 2 engineering devs, working on it. So, actor status tier 2, to remind everyone, is related to a lot of things, but includes expansions to medical gameplay. So actor status tier 2 looks at a variety of new elements such as hygiene, NPC status tracking, multiple bites, as in taking multiple bites to finish your Buster Bar, DNA integrity related to your regeneration and healing, medical insurance, cybernetic limbs for medical gameplay, and cloning. So people are like, cloning, well, wait a minute, I thought we were getting regeneration. Cloning, and this is somewhat speculation, but it's speculation based off what the lore says in regards to regeneration, biotic and medical gameplay. But the way that the information surrounding regeneration and biotic and medical gameplay reads is that regeneration it was available before imprinting, and they were able to use regeneration tech in order to clone organs or replacement limbs, in order to provide replace those things, in order for in game, but really in lore, to have your body better accept those organs, not reject those organs, or not have to, oh, I want an actual human limb, I don't want a prosthetic limb or a cybernetic limb. And it's the reason I read it that way is because regeneration existed before imprinting and being able to regenerate, a whole person, and their consciousness. And it was invented by a company where the founder, and the progenitor of the company, got into medicine because his brother died because I think it was a liver, had to have a liver transplant due to some disease, and his body rejected the liver. So, it sets it right up right there. And it would make sense as far as medical gameplay if you have a tier 1 injury, and a certain organ is, toast, it's done, done, got shot, to be able to say, oh, okay, well, or you have a limb that is a tier 1 injury, that you can either have a cybernetic or a prosthetic, a prosthetic heart, maybe a prosthetic lung, or you could have one regenerated. It's going to cost you more, but it might have better functions. So gameplay opportunities there.
So basically, the ability to make extra limbs was found out before the Ibrahim sphere was decoded.
Yep. Before we got that technology from the Vanduul, and we were able to,
Which they
download
should
your
not
brain
have in
onto
the first place.
yeah,
I'm
before
still
we were able
super
to
weary about that.
yeah, before we were able to download your consciousness onto a floppy disk and put it into an Ibrahim sphere,
We're still to make the perfect system.
So additional derelict settlements, we talked about that, how they're building more. The You're going to be releasing 15, after in the same time it took them to build one. Aerodynamic control services, engineering dev, that's interesting to me because this is the precursor. They're doing this in conjunction with the work to enable the Apoa Santakiai to fly. So I'm very excited about this because it's I am a terrible space pilot, but I love flying my dropship and I love atmospheric flight, and so that's what I want to get into, is flying my Valkyrie around with dynamic, rotation of my VTOLs, in order to do really cool dropship landings. And
I wonder if that's going to end up being, specifically for more like medium to large orgs, specialization within their pilots. So you have a dedicated atmosphere pilot and a dedicated space pilot. So that way, when you take off and go to space, the one gets you out of the atmosphere, and once they're stable in space, they swap out to a space pilot.
yeah, asteroid facilities. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited! Please show these in ISC. Give us the asteroid facility reveal like you did for underground facilities. We already know about the Apoa Santakiai. The ATC service, air traffic control. This is a big deal because they need to have this refactored in advance of quantum. Because this is not only for player interactions, but for NPC interacting and coming and going, landing at stations, landing at spaceports.
Yep. And also being able to track the entire population of everything, and Bounty Hunter V2.
Yep. Yeah.
Speaking of Bounty Hunter V2.
Yep. And that's something that you and I have been following for a long time, because Bounty Hunter V2 is cool in that, sweet, we're going to be able to have, more interesting Bounty Hunter gameplay, but it's what Bounty Hunter V2 represents under the hood as part of Quantum. That's really interesting. The AI system that, and all the NPC scheduler, NPC tracker, all these different services that feed information into the bounty hunting system that are going to make it really interesting.
I don't know why I just noticed this, but there's EU landing zone in Bounty Hunter V2.
Yeah, they're in ISC. Just what was it?
Right. Yeah, the offices, the bounty offices. I'm dense. That's fine. But yeah, that just shows you like how far along they are, though. They already have capsules. The hover capsule, like they hover. They already know that they're going to be transporting people around in them. They reworked Klesher, and they have some other bounty offices that we saw, right? Not just Klesher.
Yep.
So yeah, this is definitely a thing.
I think this vehicle content work is just them getting like the Cutlass Blue, making the bounty capsules function.
Just making them cargo pods so you can put them on the cargo grid.
Yeah, making it so you can drag someone into the pod and make it so that you can move the pod in and out. I think
wouldn't that be actor something or other? Have the actor
because they have to work on
it?
They have the vehicle content team has to work on the ship aspect of it.
Oh yeah.
Because right now those are static objects.
EU1 has, or EULZ1, EULZ2, mission feature, narrative, SST, USPU, no actor feature. Interesting.
Well, Bounty Hunting V2 had. Oh yeah, interesting.
Yeah, like I would imagine it's like handcuffing and throwing in a thing.
But that might be rolled up into a different deliverable versus just an overarching one.
That's true. It's a good thing that like Google does not track what I search on the roadmap. Handcuffs.
So Ghost 1800, just rows and rows of pods on an M2. You say that. I fully expect us to be able to have prisoner pods as cargo and be making trips from, either bounty offices or even from Klesher out to the orbital supermax that is the station that's in orbit above quarter deck in the Kellogg system. Yep. I think that's going to be a thing.
Also,
bug fixing.
The one thing
good.
The one thing I thought of is that in the mission where you have to go get the escaped prisoner, they're upright. The ones they showed that we can put people into are horizontal, so there's got to be something to do that. Also,
Yeah.
if they're dynamic and you have people in these boxes that you can push around, rows of them in M2s become bombs and shove them out the back.
Oh gosh, where's Blizzrad? Is Blizzrad in chat? Oh geez, he's rubbing off on you. Bug fixing and tech debt. PU gameplay feature team design devs working on stuff. We don't know what that is, but it's people don't realize how much bug fixing and tech debt CIG actually does between this and miscellaneous in order to bring things up to snuff as they add new features and update aspects of the game. Building interiors, we already know they're working on them. Cave archetypes, we know that they are working on those and adding. Oh gosh, what was the archetype that they were working on?
Sand just came out.
They just came out with sand, but there's another.
Ice.
I think they're working on ice. I forget which one.
Yeah.
They're adding more archetypes, and basically what they're doing is they're just working on all the surface stuff and the different aspects of it, in order to caves are made using the procedural locations tool. And so when they say cave archetypes, they're adding overlays to the cave tech within the procedural locations tool, just so they can make more and more caves, very easily. They're not having to start from scratch. They're just reskinning caves essentially. I always skip the chapter work just because it doesn't tell you anything. It just tells you what, okay, sweet. They're working on these chapters. Great. Doesn't tell you all that much. The only thing it tells you is when people are like, oh, God, there's so many people working on Squadron 42. And it's like, there's almost nothing that is Squadron 42 specific in all of this development except for the chapter work.
And chapter work can be off and on work.
Yeah. And you can see how, scrolling up and down, you can see how many people that really is. So when people say, oh, everybody's working on Squadron 42, they're absolutely full of shit. I have zero respect for your opinion when you say that, because it tells me you're not paying attention. Sorry, not sorry, but you can count how many people are working on squadron-specific things with this at any given time.
I'm super psyched for next week's episode being the month report. We get to see what new stuff is in Squadron. So for those watching here on live and watching it later on YouTube, be there for next week's episode, because we get to figure out. It's actually a really weird month report when I was putting the document together. So
the Squadron one actually was more telling than the PU one this month, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yep. Crusader
There's
Spirit,
not a lot of
we already
overlap
knew.
either.
Yeah. Crusader Spirit, we knew that was in production. Cutting Tier 2, SC and Squadron. They're building, they're working on Cutting Tier 2 in order to bring that, the cutting feature up to snuff as part of Squadron, and then it gets ported over to SC. Do you think that porting over cutting is going to be that big of a deal to bring that from Squadron into the PU? No. And that's work that benefits both. They're working on both of it. But the Cutting Tier 2 is something that I talk about and mention in the video that I'm working on right now. I literally, so I just posted it. I have a hidden channel in my Discord that I call the Boardroom. And it's where my mods and my content creator partners, Nazeris, Atirakel, Nightcob, it's where we share ideas, about different things and get feedback from each other, on things that we're working on. And so I just shared the script for my upcoming boarding actions video in there. I still have to do 2 more segments in there, basically like another page and a half worth before the first the first draft is finished. But I wanted to start getting feedback from those guys soon. But the Cutting Tier 2 is one of the things I talk about. That's in production right now. It's and you're going to be using cutting tools as part of boarding actions. So I'm very interested to see that feature progress. Live support has been mentioned multiple times in the monthly reports, as well as on ISC and SCL by Jared. We know it's in production. Live support is one of those things where it goes alongside is running in parallel with the engineering gameplay, the resource management system. But yeah, cutting tier 2 is also related to lockable containers. Not only are you going to be able to hack those lockable containers, or put in a code that, if you own the container, you know the code, or you find the code somewhere on a piece of paper or what have you. But you also be able to cut the lock with cutting tier 2. So that's like lockable containers adds another element to looting that I'm excited about. And I know Nazeris did the scanner anomaly a while back on hacking, and that's a big part of that feature is lockable containers. Victura07, thanks for joining us. MFD rework, equal feature team. Nazareth, you were just talking about the Squadron monthly report, but they've been talking a lot about that in the recent monthly reports. All the MFD stuff, the radar and star map stuff.
Yep.
Here
That's the benefit of having stuff being developed for Squadron, is we don't have to get it in a half broken state. It gets developed in a world where all the devs have access to put all their 2 cents into it, and then once it's a package, we get mailed that package and it ends up in Star Citizen.
Yeah, and the only
Not a
thing
bad thing.
we have to worry about is how does being in a networked multiplayer online environment affect the feature?
Yep.
And certain things those factors are not a factor. Other things are, but so that's it is a benefit. Things do come in a more polished state, and really they hand it to us just to see, okay, we've built it. It works great internally. Looks great internally. It's up to snuff for Squadron 42 right now. But we need to get it out to the masses so that way everybody with their different machines and different configurations can figure out what bugs there are, and we get those bugs back, that feedback back, and we incorporate it, as part of bug fixing and tech debt. And that way, when Squadron 42 releases, it has already been tested by the masses, and they have found the majority of the edge cases and stuff that normally wouldn't get found and would show up in a release product that everybody always like, oh, look at this shank, and it's like, oh, well, I don't see that on my system. Well, it's because QA didn't get to test that. Miscellaneous support, great example of look at all this work being done just as part of miscellaneous support. Between this and the bug fixing and tech debt, that's a lot of devs just supporting different features, and getting everything up to snuff, and incorporating new pieces of the game, into existing pieces, new pieces of development into existing pieces of the game. It's systemic services and tools. Yeah.
Extra feature.
Yep.
Weapon Steam, USB. Yeah, a lot of stuff. And one of my most closely followed features, Mop and Bucket.
Map, all day long. Gonna map while I sing this song.
So, even though it may sound trivial, goodbye coin. Basically, the feature is it just lets NPCs use 2 tools, one for each hand, or 2 tools in multiple hands, and switching out. So you can mop with 2 hands and then pick up a bucket and walk away. I imagine this is the start of, I imagine this is speculative, that mop and bucket will be a kind of groundwork for, one, us being able to mop our own floors on our ships, but also many more behaviors and other features that will be added on, letting actors, whether that be NPC or players, using different tools in different ways, not just you have weapon that you hold in your hands or a food, basically giving us more options to use interaction with and multiple things at the same time.
Yeah. It says it's a Squadron 42 specific thing. I don't think it's going to be limited to that. I think they're going to take this feature and expand that into the NPCs that clean up the areas that we experience in the verse. The NPC, pushing the trash vacuum around Hurston to clean up after players. oh wait, where'd it go? Okay, so we already saw the new mission salvage contracts recently started. Mission feature team, that's going to be in 319. Outpost Homestead Independent and Outlaw. This is the they it was several months back. They showed it on ISC, and it's in the subscriber vault where you can see the white box and gray box. It's a mix of white box and gray box of the outlaw overlays for the outpost homesteads. So they have gotten the independent or the I forget what they called the other one, but there's independent outlaw, and I thought there was another name.
Colonialism.
Yeah, there's colonialism, then there's independent and outlaw, and so they are. This is part of that. What they call it, Nazeris in the monthly report, like something three. Tier was it tier three or?
Now you want me to remember specific things? I don't remember.
It's like version three of the outposts is where they're at right now.
Yeah.
In terms of they have gotten Rastar built out and working so well. Now they are adding, and they built it first in mind with the what'd you just say, the colonialism overlays, and now they're adding the independent and outlaw overlays to Rastar and the outpost system in order to add more variety to not only Pyro, but these will be used to build outposts in Stanton as well. I'm sure. Persistent streaming and server meshing. Obviously, this sprint is going to go on forever. Mission feature team. The only people working on this right now is the mission feature team because they specifically talked about how they need to make it so that way missions transfer as you transfer from one server to another. And so they are already working on that aspect of server meshing. Pyro space stations, we know that they're continuing to work on because there's going to be a lot of stations in Pyro. I don't think people understand that not only are you going to have the little rundown gas stations, but you're probably going to have several larger ones that are left over from mining operations, and terraforming attempts that are the larger ones that the bigger gangs control. And so these space stations are going to be really interesting. Ruin Station. It's not. Yeah. Ruin Station is lumped into. Is lumped into the Pyro Space Station's deliverable. So it's not just the. It's all of them. And again, another thing that Nazeris and I watched like absolute hawks, the quantum simulation. 6 engineers working on it right now.
Jeez.
Yeah. And they've been, those 6 engineers. So here's where we are right now. I know it's kind of hard to see. I'm waving my mouse around it. I think you guys can see it.
Yeah.
Here's where we are right now. Here's the scheduled work, all the way throughout here, and they've been working on it all the way back to here, and it goes even farther back than that. So they are working really hard on quantum right now, and not just the quantum simulation, but there's multiple services that feed into quantum, just like there's multiple services that feed into PES. There's multiple services that feed into server meshing. They're working on those as well.
Yep.
Oh yes, resource management. I got so excited.
Did
that
they
ISC.
say that this is supposed to be in 4.0? Or was it just in the Road to 4.0 series?
Yeah.
That's 4.0 plus.
I understood it as is the road to 4.0, not guaranteed for 4.0, but the way that they're talking about the work, it makes me feel like it's going to be, we're going to be seeing it before then. I don't know if you got that vibe.
I know they're working fast on it, and they just do need some UI work. But yeah, it does seem like a lot of it's getting done a lot faster than it seems.
Yeah, and it's
Like
really
they said, oh, it's not till 4.0, but it's like, but the bed's there. Like you've been working on this for 2 years. Like
it's a big feature.
like I'm running out of what all they're going to. Well, I think that's where it comes in. Like when probably when I and when probably some other people think about it, it's the ship. We see the ships like they're working. They're using the resource manager. You can move the sliders and all that. You still have to mark up all the ships, and then it's not just ships. They have to apply that to cities, to outposts, to planets, to star systems. So I think that's where a lot of the extra time is going to come in to be a 4.0 plus uh, deliverable.
Yeah,
Is
it's hard to
that
know
it?
where are they going to do it in. Okay, we are we've gotten the system in and it's working and functioning, and we need to get it out and have players start interacting with it. So here's the limited implementation for wave one, not wave one
I
PTU, but like wave one of the
yeah,
interaction with it, tier one,
resource yeah.
and then go forward. And you bring up a good point. And
I
I
mean,
think
they have
it's
two options now. They have the salvage method, which is call out a feature. Let's
mhm.
say engineering. They've already done that twice, right, with life support and gravity, and they'll release those when those are done on their little bars. Option two, they have it with server meshing. But bar is going to go and just keep going, and they're not going to say anything about it. But we'll be getting drops during those sprints um, with parts of that feature.
Yep.
So those are the two options we have with resource management. Either we'll get a ship board resource management before, or we'll just get the life support system called out as the feature that we get when the deliverable is ready.
The good thing is, I think that they're going to continue to show us it in ISC as they continue to progress.
I mean, it's a
Basically, every once a quarter, every
flashy
quarter
thing.
until
It's
you
good.
see it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's great. And but you bring up a good point, and I think it's worth reiterating. Here's the deliverable on the progress tracker. This system, and Nazeris and I have talked about this. We did a big old segment on this. I forget what episode that was. This system will handle resources for stations, settlements, cities, and all other locations. That includes asteroid facilities. That includes underground facilities. Cities is going to include your building interiors. Everything. Everything is going to have resource management plugged into it. And that resource management is it's a recipe system. If you've played Colony Sims, you've interacted with a resource management system. And if you think about how that works, and then how that feeds into the quantum economy, congratulations, you understand how quantum works now, the quantum economy, and where all the supply and demand comes from. Resource management,
Memory unlocked.
it now resource management not only takes in supply, but also takes in supply, but also creates the demand, or creates the supply, but also takes in the demand and shows the demand, based off of a recipe
And
system.
like, it also works on like your cooler needs
Yeah.
power or coolant or whatever
Hmm.
it intakes and outputs. Like
Yeah.
it provides cooling capacity and takes in energy, right?
Yeah.
But it also works
Engineering
at like
gameplay is how we interact with it on our
Stanton
ships.
needs yeah, even works as like Stanton needs X number of tons of titanium, and also ArcCorp needs X megawatts to power this region, which outputs this resource to then the entire global or empire-wide price of this resource goes there. So it's very small to just like one component in your ship, but it's also the way the entire simulation. It's basically the paper on which the simulation draws.
Yeah, it scales like crazy. That's the crazy thing.
So I imagine like I do imagine this one is going to be end up like server meshing, and we're going to get drops of features while this keeps going.
Yep.
Because I imagine there's lots of layers to it too. Because we haven't
Layers
even
within
started to talk about
layers.
like manage outpost managing when you're building the outposts.
RSI
So
links,
much
we
stuff.
already knew that was in production, scheduled for 319. Audio is working on it, and audio is a downstream team. So, RSI Polaris, yeah, Naz, you talked about this earlier.
Kicked
7
off
art
with
devs.
7 art devs. Jeez.
Yep. Yeah, that's a lot of people. So, the reason, and to put this into
You get a
context,
room, and you get a room.
Well, that's the crazy thing.
That's
So
gonna
they
be really fast.
well that's the crazy
So
thing is like so they put when the BMM actually started going into production, and then they showed it off
mm,
May June-ish last year. It was June around the Alien Week.
it's like 8
At
people or something on it, wasn't it?
no, at that point in time, there was only two people working on it, and you
I thought
saw
it was
what
two
that looked
people.
like.
I knew there was two people on the exterior. I thought there was also another team on the interior.
But the interior was only white box at that time, and so
Oh, okay.
yeah, and so the if you remember, the Polaris already went through its uh,
Mm-hmm.
white box reconcept, so
Yeah.
it's now going
Must.
into development and it's going into production, and so they're taking that white box and then they're getting to work on the gray box, but they're going to have people working on the exterior and people working on the interior all at once. Whereas with the BMM, they had a very rough white box from the reconcept, and those
Mm.
two devs that were working on it were just working on the exterior at that time.
Okay.
And that's when
Okay.
everybody got all upset because they talked about it. They're like, well, there's only two of us right now. And everybody's like, well, wait a minute. The progress tracker says 19. It's like, no, 19 people are scheduled at various points throughout the production, coming and going throughout that scheduled period of work. Well, so this has 7 art devs working on 26 tasks, 84% load, starting off. And so that's the difference between ShinyTracker and what the progress tracker shows is when more people get added to this schedule, then that number will increase. You see that multiple times. I don't remember if they show that on the Delta report. When things get updated on the Delta report, it will say they added. It went from 1 art dev to 2 art devs, 1 designer to 3
Yeah.
designers. So when the Polaris starts work, and it's going through as that that work changes, you may see changes to the number of people working on it. But to start off with 7 artists working on it, that's a lot of commitment. Early on, that's not really that's not
I'm gonna
normally how
like just.
CIG does things.
I'm just going to imagine that there's two on the exterior because two on the exterior makes sense to me. I'm not an artist. Don't quote
Oh
me.
yeah, no,
Five people on the interior.
yeah,
It's
that's where most of the detail
basically
is.
a dev per like region of this ship. Now that 6 months is not starting to sound so outlandish. I
Um,
have high hopes for the speed of this ship.
oh yeah, you and me both. It's been my favorite ship for a
Like
very long time, other
it
than
just
the
seems like it's
Valkyrie.
it's been set up to like move through very quickly.
Seated item handling is just where if you are sitting in a seat, you can use things while you're sitting in that seat, and that goes from if you're sitting in your cockpit seat of your ship to if you're sitting on a hover quad or in on a Steve. Congratulations, you can pull your weapon out and shoot at somebody. So this is going to get real wild really fast when that becomes a thing. Security Network V1. We were just talking about this with Bounty Hunter V2. Security Network V1 is one of the services that feeds into Bounty Hunter V2 as part of the overall quantum system of services in the backend. And the mission feature team is working on that right now. 3 engineers and a designer. Sliding, whoop de doo, Squadron 40, eh, whatever. Uh,
I really hope this does not turn into Apex Citizen. Like,
yeah.
so many people are so apprehensive about sliding.
I limited use. Sliding, yeah,
As long as it's not 50 meters, like
yeah.
it's like maybe 2 meters, and it's used specifically
There
to
is
you're
no
under
friction in the Star
fire.
Citizen universe.
Oh God, no! This no. Anyway, but like one, it takes into acceleration friction of the surface, but also its like main utility is you're under fire, so you're running, and so you slide into cover.
Yeah.
That makes sense? Sure. Or like slide under a door as it's shutting. Very cinematic, very Chris Roberts. On that, don't make it go for 50 meters.
Yeah. Squadron 42 vehicle support. So you may have seen me just click and open this tab.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people working on this, and they talked about this is one of the reasons that they stopped working on the BMM because they needed these people to work on Squadron 42 vehicle support. And you're like, oh, well, what does that mean? Okay, so polishing and iterating on various vehicles needed for the Squadron 42 single player campaign. They basically lumped all of the ships instead of making a separate, that there's the Vandal fleets, Vandal fleet, there's the Bengal, there's the Javelin, the Idris, and instead of just having a separate deliverable for like every other ship, and even there's probably work in here that will go to those other vehicles, who knows. But instead of having a separate deliverable for the glaive and the blade and the driller, blah blah blah, it all, or those pirate vehicles, or things that are unannounced. Guess what? There's more capital ships in Squadron 42 that are unannounced, and we've only seen a quick glimpse of them in the leak from last year. I did a thing on it on my YouTube. It's way back there. Actually, I'll link it in chat here in a little bit. But
Still
yeah,
not conceding that's Polaris or Pegasus. Also, the
yeah,
barge that was in the
yeah.
visual trailer.
There's
The Cerber, not Cerberus.
no the Cydnus, and I don't remember if that has its own.
Cydnus. It
Cyd...
was still worked on before it was. If it has its own thing,
The
I don't
Cydnus has
think
its
it
own
does, though.
thing.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, but there are more things that are in that leak that are not specifically talked about or announced. So there's a lot of ship work that goes into this, and a lot of that will filter into the game later. Swimming tier 0, whoop-de-doo. I could care less about swimming, not my thing. Unannounced
for it.
vehicles. We've got a lot of work on unannounced vehicles. I'm going to run through these real quick just so I can take a bathroom break. We know they're working on underground facilities and they're working really hard
I can
on
run
them.
through these while you're going through that.
Perfect. Yeah, because I got to
All right.
pee.
Yep. And then you got your bit. So. All right. So let's go through these unannounced vehicles real quick. We have one that just starting up or going through a second sprint in concept. 2 art devs working on it, and work on this finishes up on 05/23. So here next month. And then we got content starting work on it past there. Got another unannounced with audio this time. So this is audio finishing up. So this may be another vehicle for the thing that we're about to do Invictus launch week. Another unannounced vehicle being worked by EU. Goes out till 06/23. And this is we got 7 people on it. 5, 6, yeah, 7 people. 2 design, and then 5 art devs. So pretty sizable amount of work being gone into this. Again, that's on 06/23. Could go further. Depends on how much work is actually there. Another unannounced vehicle. This one is concept art, so just getting going. Is on its second sprint, and that goes out till 05/23 as well. Underground facilities. So this is the underground bunkers, the whole rework that we saw that will hopefully come in this year. Hopefully. Anyway, EU sandbox work is kind of stop and start. They got 3 designers, 2 artists, devs working on it. The big thing is they know all the work they need to do. And I guess much more prominent team that we know that does amazing work. Montreal's working on it. Montreal Sandbox 1 has 4 art devs, 1 design dev, and they are pretty steady on until I think that's the end of the thing at 06/20 06/23. There we go. I can speak. That would be Yeah, 0620. Yeah, that's when it wraps up. So we'll have to see if that gets longer or they actually start talking about releasing something. Well, we'll have to see for that one. Weapon, no, tractor beams. Tractor beams is being worked on by EUPU gameplay feature team. 2 engineers working on it. And then one engineer has actually completed his work. And then the other engineer is the full-time engineer. The other one was mostly part-time. And that goes out till 0623. And this is work not just on the SRV, but also ship-based tractor beams, and remote operated turrets, and towing bigger ships. So not just the SRV, but all ship vehicle-related tractor beams, the ones that go on the hull series, the Caterpillar, and so on and so forth, as actual attachable ship components or ship weapons, I guess.
So there's 2 engineering devs working on it. That sprint below was the narrative sprint. The narrative sprint just finished. That's
what it would have. That's not how it looks. But if you open up underground facilities, it's
because they don't have individual lines for individual devs within a discipline.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. Why is he not called out then?
Oh, that's just the way it looks to me.
Gameplay feature.
Yeah, but you can see the line below.
It's a different discipline within. Yeah. So the engineers don't have the same discipline. That's what it is. Because Montreal Sandbox 1 in underground facilities, the art dev and the design dev have the 2 tracks. That's what the 2 tracks are. So the 2 engineers are not the same engineer. One may be like an engine engineer, and one may be like a gameplay engineer kind of thing, or one's a vehicle engineer, one's a gameplay engineer.
Maybe, I don't know. I still think that's that little bit right there looks like it's the difference between. Oh, I lost it.
Well, it wouldn't be listed under the EU gameplay feature team if it was a different team.
Well, maybe, yeah. Okay.
Weapon misfire. Weapon content team working on this. They are a little tiny sprint, at least for 5 of the art devs. The art devs are just about done, and the weapon feature team has till 0623 to work on it. I forget what all weapon misfire is. Basically, your gun not doing what it's supposed to do. Adding the potential for certain weapons to misfire or malfunction depending on various factors like wear and how many, like for energy weapons, if you just fire it straight on for too long, you overheat it and stuff like that. So overheating, just age of the weapon, stuff like that will make the universe much more alive. So I really hope that's coming in. And then we have 3 at the bottom. The following deliverables are scheduled to begin or continue work within the next 2 weeks. Chapter 18, Chapter 27, and Persistent Hangars is starting. We'll get another part-time only 4 engineers PU gameplay feature team. So that's only like a month or so's work on there.
Yep.
So that is the update as far as the background goes and the ShinyTracker bestows upon us.
Yeah, and that's it for this part of the podcast.
For the Roadmap now I can go.
Roundup. Yeah, the Roadmap Roundup and the ShinyTracker report. A lot of good information, even though it wasn't a big update. There's always things going on, always things that are changing, and it's a great way to keep aware of the development
going on. But we did just make 2 hours out of it.
Yeah, well, and it wasn't like it was one like the next couple updates where we get a big changes. Those are huge.
I really hope we can start at 8 o'clock for those.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
But this is going to lead us into my scanner anomaly. So this scanner anomaly is about Star Citizen. I say Star Citizen, and it's really CIG's future funding model because it incorporates Star Citizen and Squadron 42.
And you're gonna have to. I'm gonna go run. So,
pardon me. You're gonna have to bear with me because all my notes are in OneNote because Nazeris and I use that in order to make notes and then be able to share them back and forth between each other. So, but I have all the tabs from my OneNote up in here, and so I will use the tabs in order to remind myself, what, why, why did I put that in there? But I sort of had a format in my head, but I just don't have a way to read it without just constantly going back and forth between windows, and that would be a little bit disorienting for all of you guys who are still watching and hanging out in chat. So we're going to start with the letter from the chairman. And this is the one that was at the end of 2022, 12/30/2022. And it's, let's see, down here. Final thoughts. So, looking back on 2022, it has been gratifying to see Cloud Imperium and the Star Citizen community grow. We ended the year with 861 employees. Write that down. Keep that figure in your head. And the community grew to more than 4 million accounts and 1.8 million backer accounts, accounts that have purchased Star Citizen. And now, obviously, there are plenty of people who have multiple accounts, multiple backer accounts. I am one of them. But even with the number of people that have multiple backer accounts, you're still looking, at a very large number of people that have backed the game. But that being said, we're the oh gosh, what is the term that CR used? There's a term that CR used in order to relate to the percentage of accounts that people that have shown interest in the game, people that come and played in free flies versus people that have actually backed. So you have people who have shown a lot of interest but are still on the fence, and then the people that have actually backed the game. And so right now we're at a let's call it a commitment rate. We're at a commitment rate of, say, probably about 33%. So out of the 100% of people that have shown interest in the game based off the 4 million accounts, only a third of them have actually, backed the game. And let's just say, 1.3 to 1.5 million, individuals have actually backed the game. And we know that concurrency, in 2022 was, the best it's ever been. The number of individual players playing the game. Mike Lansing says Space Whales. We're going to get into that. Conversion rate. Thank you, North End Trooper. I appreciate that. Yeah, I brain farted. It's in my notes, but I didn't want to switch back over and disorient you guys. But if you go back up here to towards the top, let's see, where is it? There we go. So out of that conversion rate, say it's 1.3 million to 1.5 million, over a million unique players logged into the Star Citizen and played the game. So we don't know, out of the people who backed versus the people who created an account to do the free fly, how many that is. But 1 million unique people logged in to play the game. And they did so for more than 46 million hours. You're also having great concurrency monthly, monthly active users, with a 33% increase over 2021, with a high of 400,000 people in May alone playing the game. So that's pretty incredible. So let's look at what that means for funding. So if you're not aware, oh, dang it, why did it do that? I already had you open. If you're not aware of this, you've probably seen these images get shared off of Reddit. Weird, haven't gotten that error before. But this is the CCU game.app Star Citizen funding dashboard. And here I'll put this link into. Hold on, I'm going to go into OCS or OBS, put that in there so that you guys have the link. There we go. So this is the funding dashboard.
CCU game.
Yep. Yes. And so we can see that so we haven't gotten the 2022 financial report for CIG. We'll get that in December of 2023. It's always a year in arrears. So like December of this year is when we got the financial report for the year of 2021. And we're going to look at that here in a minute. But we can see based off the pledge tracker that CIG made $113 million in pledges. So that is people buying ships, people buying things off the store, Whether it's items or UAC, all those things fall into pledges. And we're actually off to a very good start this year as well. January was the best January we have ever had. February fell off by a long shot, but March picked back up and March is the best March that we've ever had. There was a number of content creators who, because there was a glitch in the code for the funding tracker, it stopped recording after the 12th. And so we got to the end of the month and they're like, look, it was the worst March ever. And then Joe Rune from Soul Citizens, I think, was like, no, there's a glitch in the thing. You guys are all being emotional and reactionary without actually looking at the data. And it was kind of embarrassing for a few very prominent content creators, not going to name names, but who went on Twitter and said, oh, look, we're having a downturn in funding. What does this mean? And it's like, it means that you didn't read the data because March is actually the best March we've ever had. Now, that being said, with the issues that we have had with 318 launching, right now, here we are in April. So it says, we're at the 76% as far as pledge increase delta the previous year, but we're only 10 days into April. And so if we continue on our current current trajectory in April, April will be lower than last year, but we will probably still be at about the same mark just because we started at a higher level. So going into
I
May,
imagine.
we're going to be at a similar point.
Yeah, I imagine that will actually happen. We'll have a pretty meh April.
Oh yeah.
But I imagine we'll kill records for May.
Mm-hmm.
With links coming out, especially.
And who knows what else?
Yes, like it's a military event, so there's gonna be more armed things coming out.
And with PES having gone through all of its issues and us getting the fixes for 3.18.1 and 3.18.2, I feel like 3.19 is probably going to be, I'd be willing to bet 3.19 is going to be the stablest Invictus launch we've had. Just because every year it's a shit show, but it's a less of a shit show every year. Well, every year the Invictus launch week has had lots of issues with concurrency. Well, we're going to have had just gone through with 3.18 and had a bunch of fixes with 3.18.1, 3.18.2 leading into 3.19. So we'll see. But this is where the funding is. But all of this money, if we're looking specifically at 2022, all of this money has just been from ship skins, armor stuff. This does not include money that CIG gets from outside sources. They don't specifically name what those are, but different contract things, especially payments that they get based off of, hey, we built a studio here and we're hiring all these people, and so they get tax breaks and that sort of stuff, money given to them, based off of how they operate the business. But it also doesn't include subscriptions. So we'll look at that here in a minute. So here is the the CIG financial report for 2021. And this is public information, this is not secret, and CIG's financials all the way back to here are public information. It is a requirement by the law with the United Kingdom for them to publish all this information because of the way they operate their business. And you can read the 2012 through 2015 is a composite report 2017 is a composite report because they started doing it in 2017 when they became required to do so. And so, but all the financial information is available, up to, but a year in arrears. And so it's really hard to see in this image because it's grainy, and even if you open it in a separate tab, and zoom in, it's still not very legible. But you can see for 2021, they had revenue was $100 million and over $100 million, so just shy of $101 million. But the pledges was only $86.4 million, and so you can see that right here, $86.4 million. So okay, well, where's that other $14 million coming from? Well, 14 million, nearly 5 million was from subscriptions. We have 5 million people worth, or $5 million worth of subs every year. And then nearly 10 million, a pretty significant increase over 2020, but less than 2020 or 2019, was from other income, which is incentives, partnerships, and other. They talk more about what those are in the monthly report or in this financial report, but I'm not going to get into that. So you can see that everybody's like, oh, they make so much money. They make so much money. Hold on. So let's go down here. So total cost, capital expenditures, and investments. So this is how much it cost to run CIG for that same year. They made just shy of $101 million in 2021, but they also spent not quite $100.5 million. So they had, let's see if they show it down here. Cumulative net position. This is in thousands. It was, they only profited just not even $400,000 in 2021. We're like, oh, how's that possible? They made $100 million. Are they wasting our money? What are they spending it on? Well, if you read the report, you can see that not only are they have to spend money on the salaries for the devs, they also have to spend money on contracted dev costs. So this is your Turbulent and other companies that they're contracted with for development costs. Publishing and marketing. Guess what? Publishing and marketing, the marketing budget is actually a small fraction of this. We don't know what it is exactly, but it's very little. But this is how, a substantial portion of this orange bar is how much CIG has to pay to Amazon for hosting the game. That's insane. For we talked about the concurrency and how many people are actually playing Star Citizen. And we're like, oh, well, that's pretty good. We're getting a lot of people playing. Well, that doesn't remotely compare to some of the big games that we're going to talk about later on, and it still costs them literally 15, 20 plus $million just to publish and host the game on Amazon. It's a crap ton of money. Other dev costs, so this is salaries, and then this would be benefits and such like that. And what this means is, they're bringing in a good chunk of money, with ship sales and stuff like that, but they're spending it as fast as they can, because if they don't spend that money, they get the dick taxed out of it, for lack of a better term, but B, not spending this money on hiring developers and expanding CIG in order to by expanding CIG, the entire studio, and hire more developers, it allows them to increase the throughput of development. So you can't add more developers to most things in order to make it go faster, but you can add more developers to the overall project so that you can work on more things at the same time in order to reach a cumulative goal sooner. And that's why they keep on spending money in order to, spending as much money as they bring in order to grow the company, in order to reach that eventual goal of beta, that eventual goal of completing Squadron 42, that eventual goal of release, whatever that looks like, sooner rather than later, instead of just sitting on money for no reason. And that's where the cumulative net position comes in. You can see all the way down here that, so in 2012, they made $6 million. And then in 2013, they made, this is, so at the top, they say it's net pledges and income less cost, CapEx, and investments. Well, their operating costs early on, as they're trying to grow the company, were very low. And so they're taking in more money than they could spend because they're trying to grow the company, and they're just starting out, and they had a lot of people coming in. They didn't know what to do with all this money, and they couldn't grow fast enough. Well, at this point, and so by the end of 2014, they had a $25 million surplus that they're sitting on, and finally the the cost of doing business outpaced how much money they're bringing in, but they are able to continue to hire and continue to grow because they were sitting on this surplus. In 2015, still at a $19 million surplus, and they evened out in 2016 and they still had over a $19 million surplus. And they continued to grow in 2017 and they still had a $14 million surplus, and then in 2018, this is where things start to get interesting because they had this surplus of $14 million and they continued to grow the company, but because more and more people were buying into the game and playing the game, you have your publishing costs with Amazon, going from a little bit, because obviously there was nothing here, and then you've got a little bit of hosting and stuff going on, but these costs are going up and up and up because more and more people are buying the game, but also more and more people are playing the game. So your cost of operation is going through the roof as well. And so in order to offset those costs, so that way they're not spending, a big issue is there a lot of this in the red right here is them spending money that they gets brought in from people pledging for the game and having to spend that money on your platform costs, on your hosting with Amazon. And so part of the deal with them bringing in the investors, and we'll talk more about that here in a second, was to use this money, the minority investment here in 2018, and then again at the end of 2019, they announced it at the beginning of 2020, was to use this money for not only marketing, but to help cover the costs of the platform, the hosting, the ability for us to play the game as they're developing it live. They didn't want to spend, they didn't want to have to not be able to grow the company and expand the development of Star Citizen Squadron 42. So they brought on this investment to cover those costs and the costs of marketing so that they could still, it wouldn't slow down development. They could continue to expand CIG so they could continue to expand the throughput so we could get to that eventual goal of Squadron 42 release, and, Star Citizen beta, an eventual release. And it wasn't until 2020 that the amount of money coming in, back up here, they did not plan on 2020 being like this. They knew they were going to continue to have growth and that, the amount of growth was close enough that they could continue to eat off that surplus to cover their platform costs, in order to, by the time they reached their goal and spent that money, that the game would be selling enough and that they would be able to sell Squadron 42 and have enough people backing that it would make up the difference. Well, 2020 came along and funding went through the roof. And then 2021 came along and funding went through, even bigger. And then we just made, this is the total funding, but 86 million of it was pledges. Well, we just made like $27 million more in pledges in 2022 than we did over 2021. So this purple bar right here is actually way up here, just the purple, not even counting this stuff. And so we're looking at total funding for CIG for 2022 being, if last year the subscriptions and other income was just shy of 15 million, if we even use that again, we're looking at total funding for CIG being just shy of right about $130 million, when total funding for 2021 was $100 million. They made about $30 million more in 2022, probably $25 to $30 million more than they did over 2021. That's a huge increase. That's a increase that's as big, or almost as big as the increase going from 2019 to 2020, which is just nuts. And the CIG is basically keeping pace with that right now, as of this, as of us speaking, right now. So why is this important? And that's why I wanted to talk about this, because people think that, they're just wasting our money, blah, blah, blah. Well, they're continuing to grow the company in order to, we talked about flight time and throughput. Flight time is with the procedural locations tool, with Rastar. They're building all these tools so that way the flight time for them to do a thing goes from, instead of being 3 months to 3 weeks, or 3 months to 13 days. That's shortening the flight time. So that same amount of people can do the same amount of work in the fraction of the time. But they're also growing the company to increase the throughput. So that way, okay, we had 10 people that instead of taking this long to do this much work, they're taking this long. Well, now we're adding 20 people. And the growth, the amount of work, development work that can get done, across the various deliverables of Star Citizen Squadron 42 becomes exponential in nature. And if you've been paying attention to what Jared has said in ISC, and I think he said it in the most recent SEL, where he talks about, I should have clipped it, and I feel dumb for not doing it. Actually, I think it's at the end of this ISC. Hold on.
Of building.
So, as it was explained to me while you're pulling that up, in the cumulative net position, black is bad at the top because that means that they're sitting on money that was just taxed through the nose for. And just because having that money is bad, they want to be in the red because, one, that means they're putting that money into
of building interior
into the
modules
business. They're not getting it taxed by just holding on to it. And that's a big kind of indicator of what happened in 2020. Yeah. Because they ended up $7.3 million in the black. That was not supposed to happen. And that's like, even in 2021, they weren't able to get rid of enough money. Still, it was $349,000 in the black. They want it to be in the red. They need it to be in the red. So when you see like, wow, they're spending a lot of money, those offices, even with those office purchases for 2019, 2021, like they're still in the black. They need to get rid of that money.
Yeah, you do not want to be, when you are developing a product and growing a company, you do not want to be sitting on money. You don't want to, where'd we go? So the,
Yeah, just scroll down.
Yeah, so here we are. This is 2021. They just made a crap ton more money in 2022, and they probably they hired a bunch of people. They are building the new studio in Manchester. They finally moved into it at the end of this year. The same with the one in Frankfurt. I wouldn't be surprised if we see an expansion of the Austin and Santa Monica studios. And they're also investing in Turbulent. And even with all that, I think we're probably still going to see a substantial addition to the cumulative net position in 2022 when that report comes out, which is, they brought in all this money. It covered their costs of development. It covered their platform costs, and they, as well as all their capital expenditures, and with growing the company, and they still had a are going to have had a substantial surplus, because they're bringing in 2021, 2022, 2020, they brought in money faster than they expected, and so they couldn't plan for how to spend that money. And so they're trying to spend that money. They're trying to hire people. That's why there's so many jobs available on both the Turbulent and the CIG website, and it's why CIG is continuing to expand, and we're going to talk about that some more here in a second. But you can see, let's see, right. Play it from here.
Nice.
There's only
And this
one open
process is
position
repeated in all.
Don't interrupt.
Oh, Montreal is. Oh, sorry. I didn't know you were playing a video. Sorry.
Yep.
Nice. And this process is repeated in all subsequent rooms, and overall, it's another terrific example of how game development is exponential and absolutely non-linear in progress.
And that is a quote that Jared has essentially repeated multiple times in ISC and SCL, and Jared is trying to beat this into our heads for a lot of the last 2 years with the video content that comes out, that they are shortening flight time and increasing throughput throughout the company and Nazeris and I have been, with all of our different segments that we've been working on, we've been trying to say that this is why they're doing this. Well, they're able to do that because of not the development breakthroughs, but also because of the funding that's come in. But so let's see, headcount. Okay, so at the end of 2021, there were 748 people on the CIG payroll. That's total headcount. And now, as of the end of the letter from the chairman, they said they're at 860. So in the span of a year, they hired 13 people? Yeah, 113 people. And I don't think this is counting Turbulent. But we know that Turbulent, I forget where the post was, but they were up to like 50 something. It was that last count over the last several months. We know that they were the goal for that studio was to grow it to 100 developers working, building star systems, and they're only halfway there, and we know what they're doing. But at the same time, let's go further into that the Manchester studio that they just finally finished moving into at the end of 2022. And so they finished and they're moving into, so right down here at the bottom, this is the part that people miss. So when this was announced, employs more than 400 people worldwide. And so this was in November 2021, when we're at this point of 748, people working for CIG. With 400 employees based at its current UK studio, headquartered in Wilmslow, Cheshire. So 400 of those 748 people were at the, we're going to be going to the Manchester office. But the goal for that office was to create 700 jobs in the metropolitan area by 2023. So they want to add 300 more people by the end of this year, 2023, that we're in. And right now, they are right at about halfway to that goal, and they're so they've got a ways to go. They're a little bit over halfway, because they went from 700 and something. They added basically about 140 is where we're at now. But then going from beyond 2023, they want to add an additional 300. So within the next 5 years. So that's looking at this is in 2021. So 2020 by the end of 2026. They want to have gone from 400 people in Manchester to 1,000. So they want to add 600 people to CIG just in Manchester. That's not Frankfurt. That's not Austin. That's not Santa Monica. That's not Turbulent. They want to add 600 people to CIG Manchester. Basically over the next 3.5 years. 3 years and some change. So to put that into context, let's go back to the headcount analysis in the 2021 report. So when all of CIG was, let's pick 2019, when all of CIG was 600 people, the salaries and other dev costs at 2019 was, let's see, that's 39 million plus another 8 million. So let's round that up to about $50 million. $50 million for salaries and dev costs for 600 people. So they want to add, and when this thing was written about the Manchester studio, they were telling us that they wanted to add another $50 million just for Manchester of dev costs to the 2021 total. So 2021 dev costs, so salaries and other dev costs, we've got nearly 12 million in other dev costs, and I think that's 51 million right there. So 63 to 65 million dollars, and $65 million plus another $50 million. So, and again, we're only counting Manchester. So by the end of 2026, they want, if no other growth happens, for any of the other offices, and we're just looking, at an increase in the Manchester cost of doing business, and this is just rough table napkin math. You're looking at capital expenditures, total costs of running CIG of being $150 million. So that's a lot of money, considering that with here in 2022, we had our biggest year yet, just an absolute monster year over 2021, and we're estimating that they brought in about $130 million. So obviously, they want to grow in Santa Monica, they want to grow in Frankfurt, they want to go in Austin, Turbulent, the contracted dev costs, they're going to continue to grow. This blue box right here is going to continue to get bigger as Turbulent continues to grow. And CIG was in Korea, in a province, county, I don't know what you'd call it, a state in Korea. They were meeting with government officials in a part of Korea whose sole job is to bring software developer jobs to their area. So I guarantee you. Oh my gosh, sole job. Naz will be here all week, folks. But I would not be surprised if we saw an announcement of CIG expanding, because they are now going to be they're going to be hosting the game in China. They're expanding the game in Asia, because obviously it's a huge market. Well, they're going to want to have a studio to support that, but they need to continue to branch out in order to be able to hire developers, because it's a very competitive market. So if you're fishing in only one pond, you're limiting how many developers you can actually hire to work on your game. So I wouldn't be surprised if they built a studio in Korea or somewhere else in Asia to help support that. Maybe even in Australia, who knows? But obviously Korea, software development's a pretty big deal, especially gaming. But so we know we can, just by doing some napkin math, they're going to need to earn a lot more money just to continue to fund the ongoing development of the game in 2026, with just the bare minimum of increase, not even the other increases for the projected increases for other parts of the studio, as well as Turbulent, and opening new studios. So you're looking at operating costs that are going to be, at the end of 2026, sitting probably between the 150 to 200 million, 150 on the low end, probably 200 million on the higher end, annually, every year. And I'm sorry, if you think that they're going to be able to make that kind of money on selling just ships and a small amount of subscriptions, you're on drugs. So let's talk about how CIG is likely, potentially likely, going to be solving this problem. So we've talked about the new studio opening. They took in these minority investments. The first one was in 2018. So let's see. So here we go. Yeah. So December 2018 is when they announced it as part of a letter from the chairman. So CR says, so it's with this that I would like to announce that we have closed a minority investment, and there's another link to a fact sheet that we'll look at briefly, into Cloud Imperium US and UK with Clive's family, and Clive and Keith, they talk about who the investors are. Keith Snoots Entertainment for $46 million for approximately 10% of the shares in Cloud Imperium. So they took that first minority investment in 2018, at the end of 2018. For a 10% stake, non-controlling with those investors. And then again, here's the Cloud Imperium investment fact sheet. Oh, did I miss the other one? Oh, wait a minute. Where is that? Okay. Well, anyway, so that was the first round of investment. And then if you go back to here, and we go up to the income, or where is it? No, it's this one down here. So here's that minority investment in 2018. And then it was announced in the beginning of 2020, but the second round of investment from the same group for another $17.25 million in 2019. So right now that group has I think it's a 15% non-controlling stake in Cloud Imperium Games. And when they made that first investment, the investment, they have to have, somebody come in and audit the company to sort of figure out what it's worth. And they valued CIG in 2018 at being worth $500 million based off of, all of the capital that they had as well as, earning potential. Earning potential being in 2018, they made, $50 million and, projected earnings and stuff like that. So obviously CIG has more than doubled their earnings and they're significantly larger than they were in 2018. And so CIG is probably, valued at about $1 billion right now. So it's for investors, they have made a pretty good return on their investment, in terms of their shares have doubled in value essentially. Which is a pretty good return on investment, but investors, and big, venture capitalists, they don't want to just be like, oh, sweet, I doubled my money and then cash out. They want to not only double, if not quadruple, increase their money by an order of magnitude, but they also want to be making big old dividends the entire time. And I couldn't find in which report it was, but it was either in 2020, I think it was in 2020, they talked about how much they paid in dividends to these investors, and in the dividends are based off of a percentage of total earnings, and so they basically paid them. It was like a 1.5% off of total earnings in dividends. They paid them $1 million in some change, which is nothing. They invested $63 million and they got, they made $1 million and some change back in a year. Well, in order to make their money back, they'd either have to sell their shares, or they would have to hang on to their shares and wait forever based off of dividends to make their money back. That's not how investors work. That's not how venture capitalists work. So how do those venture capitalists go from making a modest return on investment, by their standards, to making a big return on investment? Well, CIG not only needs to be able to bring in a crap ton more money to be able to cover their development costs, but they also need to bring in a lot more money to give the returns to these investors that those investors expect, as well as to continue to work on other projects, and develop Star Citizen, Squadron 42 episodes, single player campaigns, what have you, for years to come. So let's look at what else occurred in 2018, and 2019 that was going on that these investors may have had to influence their decision making. So if you remember, at the end of 2017 is when we got the vertical slice. It was end of 2017, is when we got the vertical slice. Now, the vertical slice is really cool, and everybody goes back and looks at it, and they did a really good job with it, and it's a really good. It's a vertical slice. It's meant to show you a snapshot of what the intent is for the game. Guess who else vertical slices are for? Investors. Oh. So, do you think it's a coincidence that we got a vertical slice of Squadron 42 within a year of them closing the deal? Because these deals take a long time to fall through. The audit process, all the legal stuff. They were talking to these investors, a year or more before they actually made the investment and money changed hands. So that vertical slice was marketing for not only players but also the investors, 100%, because CIG and CR sold them on the idea of, hey, you can invest money into, Cloud Imperium games. This is the game we're building. This is why it's unique. This is why it has this sort of earning potential, blah, blah, blah. And guess what else they sold them on? Guess what else was going on in 2018 and 2019? Goddamn Fortnite. Fortnite.
Still going on.
In 2018, just 2018, Fortnite made $2.4 billion. $2.4 billion. In 1 year, Fortnite made nearly 5 times what CIG has made in over a decade. $2.4 billion. And Fortnite released, first year of release was 2017 into 2018. So Fortnite released in 2017, and in its first year, 2017 crossing over into 2018, they had 125 million players. And 125 million players brought in $2.4 billion. That's just absolutely flipping nuts. It was, really unheard of. Fortnite, for the most part, really, got the whole thing started. But how does Fortnite make its money? Microtransactions. Fortnite's free to play. Fortnite makes big, just absolutely stupid amounts of money on microtransactions for stupid cosmetic shit. And I say stupid cosmetic shit. I've spent money on skins, not for Fortnite, but for Star Citizen. But people are. This is simple consumer psychology. People are far more willing to part with $1 here, $5 there, multiple times throughout the year for little things that give them little bits of joy than they are willing to spend hundreds of dollars on a single purchase. And that's the big difference between Star Citizen and things like Fortnite, and we'll get into Warzone here in a second, and where this is going. Because the reason I decided to do this segment right now is we just released, Star Citizen CIG just released PES. And PES is the technology that allows for everything to persist. And that, it's not only a really cool, has a lot of great gameplay potential, it also is what will allow for infinite customization potential. And we just, Nazeris, and I just went over the Roadmap Roundup, and the progress tracker, ShinyTracker reports, there's persistent hangers, there's persistent habs. We already know that you'll be able to customize your ships. And we're going to look at the pledge store. You can buy skins for your ships. You can buy all sorts of armor and weapons for customization purposes. It's the same thing, but CIG hasn't been highlighting it because it's not a big part of the game right now, and they've been building the technology to make it to really expand the potential of customization. And we all, Nazeris and I are good friends of Paul's. We're big fans of the Astropub, and Office Hours and Captain's Table. And Paul always says the end game of every MMO is fashion. Well, it's not just fashion for your character. No one is taking it to the to the level that Star Citizen is when it comes to customization. Because not only are you going to be able to build your own outpost and customize that, but you will be able to have your apartment, on New Babbage and customize that. You'll be able to have customize the interior of your ship. You be able to have ungodly amount of customization options for your character, and certain things. All these things will be available in game. And you can do it in game, but if you don't want to grind for it, you can always buy UEC to buy it in game, or you can buy it directly off the website, however they're going to incorporate it. But that's where the money is. And everybody's like, well, there's no way Star Citizen is ever going to have 125 million players. Oh, I completely agree. Star Citizen as a MMO is never going to have that kind of player bandwidth. If we get to a tenth of that, I'll be absolutely thrilled. But if you think about how much money a tenth of, if 125 million people spent $2.4 billion, if Star Citizen with, on the low end, let's say Star Citizen players had the same rate, end up having the same rate of payment for microtransactions for customization options that Fortnite players. And it's not going to be the same, but we'll make up the difference with the fact that you have more options. If Star Citizen gets a tenth of the player base, if we reach 12.5 million accounts and people playing the game, we have a much higher conversion rate than we do now. Well, a tenth of $2.4 billion is still $250 million. It's still $250 million a year. And that that alone exceeds the operating costs, that we're estimating on the high end. That's just for microtransactions, and that's just for Star Citizen, the MMO. We're going to talk more about that here in a minute. So, Warzone, which another very popular game. If we go down to the bottom of this article, in 2020, Warzone made almost $2 billion. In 2021, they made again like another $2 billion. So comparable. There's room in this market for more games. People, it's not a theory. It is a hard, economic and consumer psychology fact that gamers will pay microtransactions for the ability to customize their characters. And Star Citizen aims to let you customize your character and everything else that you own in game. And Warzone had about the same number of players over the same period of time. Over 100 million people played Warzone in its first year of release, from early 2020 to same period 2021. So it's very consistent across the genre. And Star Citizen doesn't need to have these kinds of populations. Star Citizen and CIG don't have to make that kind of money off of microtransactions alone, because Star Citizen is working on a diversified funding model. Because not only do they have the MMO, but they also have the single-player campaign, which is going to be 3 episodes, and we're probably going to see more single-player campaigns as they continue to grow CIG and add more people to the development pool to further increase throughput, to allow them to work on more projects at the same time, releasing more products over the same period of time. But Nazeris and I we just showed you the progress tracker and the Delta report and the deliverables report. And Nazeris, what was one of the things that we noted, that there's a big team, or not a big team, but a small team making a lot of changes to an outdated part of the game.
Arena Commander.
Arena Commander.
I was just about to say something like, is Arena Commander going to show up in this? Because just imagine for 2 seconds they make REC purchasable.
Yeah, or whatever they end up doing.
I mean, just that alone, like, it's a competitive game mode. People will do anything to buy the biggest, baddest shit, the biggest, baddest weapons.
And to paint it whatever they want, because...
Exactly! Like, oh my god!
We just looked at Fortnite and Warzone, which is really just customization of your character. Well, your avatar in World of Tanks and World of Warships and War Thunder is a vehicle, and people still spend microtransactions to get unique vehicles and different skins for their vehicles and such. Same thing. And CIG is putting a ton of development effort into updating. They say Arena Commander, but it's the whole suite of game modes outside of the MMO. And right now they're working.
Arcade modes.
Yeah, the arcade modes. Right now they're working on Star Marine. They're working on Arena Commander. They're working on the race modes of Arena Commander. And once they get those up to snuff, they're going to be working on Theaters of War as well.
Still exists, guys. Don't worry.
Yeah. So you have the MMO with it, customization options out the wazoo, far more than any other MMO has ever done. And you're going to have the arcade modes, which is essentially what Warzone, and Fortnite are. our arcade modes. And so you have options for people who want to play an MMO to customize their characters. You have options for people who want to do shorter game match type modes. What would you call that, Nazeris? You know, there's got to be a term for it. But people who don't want to play an MMO, they just want to hop in the game and play. Well, you have options for them to customize their character too. You could make it so that way, you buy it in Arena Commander and you also get it in the PU. And then you also have a game mode in Theaters of War that will, scratch the itch of Battlefield type players. So you've got Call of Duty type players, you've got Battlefield type players. You've got people who are interested in War Thunder, World of Tanks.
On top of that,
World of Planes, all that.
On top of that, you even have per system. You have different types of game genres in there. Like you could have a system that's based on Tarkov.
Racers.
You could have a Tarkov in Star Citizen.
Yeah, and how many like racing games are out there? There's a crap ton. Star Citizen is hitting a bunch of genres, and that's why I keep on mentioning throughput, because they have developed. Nazeris and I have covered the tools ad nauseum. Well, the tools don't not only help you build Star Citizen and take Star Citizen to that next level, they also use those same tools and can use those same tools to build maps and locations, as well as more vehicles. They're making tools for stuff for your characters as well, so that you have all this. You're increasing the throughput for not only building Star Citizen, for not only building follow-on episodes of Squadron 42 or other campaigns, but also for expanding those arcade modes. So that there's a lot more variety. And that's the big difference, is these other huge companies haven't invested in the tools to increase the throughput for the development of their game, because they've gone for the low-hanging fruit. And they've made a crap ton of money on that low-hanging fruit. Well, CIG has taken the longer route by investing in the tools and the development of tools, so that way they could hit a lot more markets with a lot more depth. And they don't have to, the Star Citizen as an MMO, the MMO and the space game is kind of niche, but everything they're adding to it isn't niche, and all the arcade modes aren't niche, and they don't have to have 100 million players playing Star Citizen, but they can get tens of millions of players playing any combination of Star Citizen, the arcade modes, and Squadron 42, and that diversifies your funding pool, which is what allows you to get far more than the $130 million they made last year. That's what allows them to fund the ongoing development of a company that's going to be costing $200+ million a year, over the next, by 2025, 2026. But if the company costs $250 million a year to run, but CIG is making, $500 million a year, $1 billion a year off of all of these, off of this diverse product set that they're marketing to a very wide range of gamers across multiple platforms. That's how the investors, where'd they go, who put in a little bit of money, relatively for them, tens of millions of dollars, are making a return on investment of hundreds of millions of dollars. Because now you have CIG that was worth $500 million when they brought in $50 million. Well, now they're bringing $500 million a year, and they're worth $5 billion. And their stake in your 15% stake in a $500 million company became a 15% stake in a $5 billion company, and you're getting dividends on all of the profit that CIG is bringing in. That's where the funding model is going. And I've got a few clips just because I was...
Back to the...
Stop. So I grabbed a few clips from the most recent Inside Star Citizen, because when I watched this video and I saw these clips, I was already working on this scanner anomaly and I had it in my head and I was taking notes. But these clips are just in the last couple of weeks, highlight perfectly where CIG is going with these customization options and now that PES is in the main dev branch and all the developers know what they can do with it. And now they're going hog wild with your customization options, and those things are going to start to be not only available in game for all of us, for me, the loot goblin, but also available to buy. Because sometimes you just want something and you don't want to have to go looking for it or spend money in game. You just want it in your inventory forever. That's why I have certain skins. So let's watch this first clip. This first one is the clip from. Actually, I better turn down the volume just a little bit on this. This first one is regarding the your HAB. Congratulations. This is persistent HABs at work.
And here we are.
Back to the Interactables team, they've also been prototyping a new way to hang a variety of posters on the walls of the player HABs and spacecraft with these new, expanding electronic devices that could let you decorate any space that's marked up for them. The prototyping here is using common adverts for in-universe events, but the possibilities of this feature become apparent very quickly in allowing players to not only decorate their spaces, but to collect and memorialize important moments from their time in the persistent universe, to take missions to set up flyers for in-game shops or events, post bulletins for bounty missions, and much, much more. And this last...
So this is why whenever there's an ISC or an SCL, I generally watch it 2 to 3 times. And when I watch these, I watch them with the subtitles on, because I want to not only watch what's going on, but I want to read what is coming out of Jared's mouth, because everybody gets distracted by the pictures and they don't hear what Jared is saying, and so they forget these things. And they, the Interactables team is what was 100% made in order to take advantage of PES and then allow for customization options. 100%. A, it makes the game more diegetic and interesting, but B, everything that they're going to be doing, it is expanding on tech and showing the potential for what you can do for customization. And they're just barely scratching the surface with your persistent HAB, and we know that they're going to be working on persistent hangers here, like right now. Let's watch the next clip real quick. And this one. Yeah, it's just more the
See all you out there on the internet's like, these Star Citizen fish look great. I'm gonna know you don't listen to a word I'm saying. My feelings will be hurt.
Meanwhile, the Interactables team, formerly known as the Props team, have been running through and physicalizing a bunch of assets for the persistent universe, like these weights for gyms like the ones you might find in New Babbage. Similar to the fish we just watched, this is also before animation has had their chance to contribute. So let's not judge the throwing form being displayed here. Still, it's nice to see even the littlest things in the verse behave naturally with realistic mass and physics whenever possible. This effort to make things behave as you'd expect them to also extends to the coffee machines of the verse, with a pass recently done to go through and repair their broken functionality. Now, I did consider turning this section into an update on either bartender or mess hall features, just for old time's sake. But someone who will go unnamed stopped me. Just know that there are heroes out there looking out for each and every one of you. Also, it looks like the team developed a few new coffee mugs along the way. We'll just let this video play for a bit, see a couple coffee cups in action, and think about how much bartender stuff I'm not talking about right now.
Also,
Interactables. And things that you can interact with that allow you to customize your ship, your HAB, your outpost, your hangar, everything, all the things. And let's see, there's this last clip.
Also in white boxes, the pre-production blockouts for a variety of building interior modules that will fit inside the towering skyscrapers of New Babbage on Microtech, being developed and tested in situ simultaneously to work out and discover anything developers might not have considered or recognized as necessary in the original mandate. The idea here is that once the player lands, They would enter this particular interior from the very top, encountering a lobby and expected elevators. Then, after a brief trip down, emerge into a number of different interior modules such as block of player apartments seen in the example here. And speaking of modular
Player apartments. So not just persistent habs, persistent habs, but persistent apartments. Apartments that you can buy in game using UEC, or you can buy with UEC that you bought outside of game in order to own that apartment. You have that virtual real estate, and then you can buy little customization options, or you can fill it with things you find out from out the verse. But everything you need. If you remember, like I played Star Wars Galaxies back in the day, and they just a tiny fraction of what they were trying to do here. But you can see right here that CIG is ramping up for a not only substantial increase in players, but also an exponential increase in the ability of players to customize everything about their interactions with the game. And that's a market opportunity. A market opportunity that with every other big game that is making a crap ton of money right now, that is proven to make money and help and fund your company. And that is how CIG, from a holistic point of view, with the arcade game modes, the infinite customization options, your episodes of single player campaigns, the customization crossover between the PU and the arcade modes, and then the massive opportunities for player ownership of things within the game for you to be able to customize, where you have a lot of voluntary options for microtransactions that you can buy this in game, you can earn it in game. If you don't have time to grind, or you just want it now because with our consumer economy right now, the patience is not a thing. We're not very good at that. You can just spend $1 or $3 or $5 to get these things, or get packs of these things, or just buy the UEC to buy them in game whenever you come across something. That's where CIG goes with making money. The last thing I wanted to talk about, and I couldn't find the original source for this, but if you remember, and if you were paying attention to this back when Invictus Launch Week was going on last year, obviously at Invictus Launch Week they sold whole limited ships like the Idris and the Javelin and the Kraken, both vanilla and privateer. And I was looking for the original data from what happened last year, but I remember having this conversation on Reddit. And this last year, even though Invictus Launch Week made a ton of money, it took long. These whole limited ships were available for longer periods of time than they ever have before. And I think that this, and this is partly speculation, but it makes sense when it comes to consumer psychology, is that every year as they add more and more players to the game, as we get more people buying into the game, that is what drives the algorithm that says, okay, we're going to sell this many Krakens, this many Idrises, this many Javelins. We don't know what those numbers are, but that's how it works. Well, obviously we had a lot more people coming in, and so we had more of these whole limited ships available. And you would think with all those more people, well, they're going to buy up those ships. Well, it turns out that they sold slower this last year, and it's the rate at which those sold has gone down, over time, relative to when they were first released. And it's because I think it's because more and more people that are coming in are the people that will spend small amounts of money, your standard gaming consumers who will spend small amounts of money on microtransactions, but aren't willing to part with hundreds of dollars for big expensive ships. And as these lines are working on their way towards intersecting, but we're going to get more out of. We talked about how we might be able to see a fraction of the type of the number of players for Star Citizen and its multiplayer game modes that Fortnite and Warzone enjoy. But a as more and more of those people come over and start experiencing the game modes and what CIG has to offer, fewer and fewer as a percentage of those people are going to be willing to part with hundreds of dollars at a time for a spaceship. But CIG can still earn their money little bits at a time with microtransactions throughout the year. And that's where the funding is, the real funding is going to go. I think they're going to stop selling ships? No, I think they're going to continue to sell game packages with ships, to a certain extent. I think, and they're obviously going to continue to develop ships, but it's not the ship sales that are going to drive CIG's funding and that will allow them to continue to grow the company and make have the kind of earnings that they're trying to do in order to develop what they want. It's going to be the microtransactions, and some subs as well. This diversified funding model, and as a percentage, you're going to see less and less of ship sales mattering to the overall income of CIG, and more to these other aspects of a diversified funding model. And that's where I think it's going with Star Citizen's future funding model. Everybody's like, "Oh, ships make them way too much money. They'll never stop selling ships." And it's like, you can already see the trends developing right now. It's kind of early, but you can see the trends of fewer and fewer people out of the overall population are willing to part with those big ticket ships. And as we get more and more people playing the game, you're not going to have the number of whales, the number of people willing to spend that money relative to the overall population is going to continue to go down, and CIG can't rely on ship sales to continue to grow the company. They have to diversify, and I think that's been the plan all along. I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest that, and I think ship sales are going to continue to go down relative to the overall income over time, to where the CIG is probably going to be able to eventually keep that promise of stopping selling concept ships.
And even when they abandon selling ships, they don't, because you can buy UEC.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
for those who want the skippable power, you just buy UEC instead of buying a ship. I imagine they'll make more tiers available for the UEC, so it more lines up with. That way they keep their promise, and they still let people just jump the line to get an Idris.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all weasel words. You'll still be able to buy ships in game. You'll be able to buy UEC because buying currency is always, it's going to be a thing. And they can keep their promise. They can continue to develop ships, because each time they develop a ship, they can develop the skins, and all, ships with interiors you'll be able to customize, and it's all part of the overall game universe, making it feel alive and interesting, but also, developing new ships is part of the things, just like adding new star systems to the game or expansions to game mechanics is what is going to keep people coming back every quarter to play the new patch. And if you keep people coming back, you keep exposing them to the microtransactions, and that's what gets them to buy stuff, And people can hate on it all they want, but it's consumer psychology and it works. And for me, if it gets Star Citizen and the game modes and the single player campaigns developed, I don't care. People can spend their money on whatever they want. This is one of my hobbies. People can spend $45 and nothing more on Star Citizen for all I care. It's entirely up to you. But I wouldn't consider it. I don't think of it as predatory marketing at all, because no one's forcing you. It's does this make you happy? Sweet. Click buy.
Yeah, it only becomes predatory like when you get like, you're getting this now in a battle pass, but you could be getting this. That's predatory.
Yeah.
Not the entire world's or the entire game's items and ships are open to you, but you could also buy it on the website. That's not predatory at all.
Yeah. No, they do have to walk a fine line in terms of being upfront and open about it, and informing players and stuff like that. But you can tell people until you're blue in the face that you can buy all of this in game, with UEC that you earn. You can grind for all of this. It's just like, anything else in any other MMO, but people are still going to be like, some people will grind for it, other people will buy it, some people will be a mix. It is what it is. But yeah, that's this is what I have for this evening's Scanner Anomaly. And I know we've been going on the Scanner Anomaly for about an hour now, and we're running close to 4 hours for the podcast total. But we talked a lot at the beginning, and we talked a lot about. Actually, I'm going to transition back to the other window. There we go. So yeah, but yeah, that's what we have for this evening. Nazeris, do you have any closing thoughts about anything, the Scanner Anomaly, what have you?
I think it's insane the amount of work you put into all these things, and it was a really good one. I can't wait to see the discussion in the comments on this one. Anytime somebody brings up money in Star Citizen, oh boy,
it's a little bit clickbaity, and I know it's probably I'm expecting a comment to say, I know some people will think that it is maybe even a little bit tone deaf with what's going on with 318, but I thought about this before. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Nazeris, get out of my head. Yeah.
That's why we're doing this show together.
Yeah. Everything going on with 318 is temporary, and it too will pass, and 319 will come, and 320 after that, and this is just
there's a reason why I kind of disconnect from the game during patch releases, because it's always the same stuff. It comes out, it's broken, the Spectrum and Reddit light up with the rees, and they just oh my god, this is the worst patch ever, it's never going to fix, Star System will always be a buggy game. 6 months later, we're hitting massive new records in concurrency and new players, and everyone's having a great time, and we start getting hyped for the next patch. So I disconnect when they start talking about oh my gosh, it's so broken. Shh. One, it's an alpha. You chose this life. Two, we've been here before.
Are you so emotionally invested in a patch for a video game?
Not even the game, just a patch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A patch isn't working as intended. That does not equal CIG shooting your dog. You don't need to go all verbal John Wick. It's not worth it.
On top of what you've said, I imagine that the entire microtransaction ecosystem for CIG will take a hit when they announce no more wipes. Because people were okay, so I don't need to spend money to make sure I have it on the next patch. I can just get a game and have it in the next patch. But with the amount of stuff that you talked about, couches, posters, bed sheets, pillows, body pillows, knickknacks, chessboard, books in the verse for your apartment, slippers, other clothing options. Depends on how interesting they want to go with the clothing options. And then you have pets still coming to the game. Pets were not announced, but pets were one of the starter goal or stretch goals. And then you got clothes for your pets. It's an MMO. They do that sort of thing. You got obviously paints for ships, and hopefully a greater customization coming later. And there'll be things you can put, you can put doodads anywhere. It's a dynamic the PS system. Yeah. So they could just have doodads as a category of microtransactions that are just around. And on top of that, they can use that entire system.
All of these things that you can
drive playing it.
Yeah, everything that you can for microtransactions, whether it's armor or guns or ship paints or things to hang on the walls, in your hangar, apartment, homestead, furniture, collectibles. All of these things are very low effort in terms of being able to make them. And so CIG can hire a small army of new grad developers straight out of uni who you don't have to pay them for a crap ton of money, and I hate to say it, but you're the new guy, you're new to the industry, you have limited skills. Here's where you go to get experience making art assets and everything like that, things that you can animate, what have you. It lets them build their resume, and it lets CIG get all infinite customization options added to the game, dirt cheap. Not dirt cheap, but at far less money, because you were able to hire like I forgot to mention it when we were talking about the growth of the development team. All those aren't that growth in that development team isn't meant to be 600 senior experienced developers. It's like, no, CIG needs an army of people who are able to create variety for hab interiors, depending on where you're buying your hab, whether it's Sherman on Castra or any number of these landing zones. You're going to need a lot of people to create these art assets, to create the variety, so that way people get to feel unique. You're going to need a variety of people to create new armors and weapons and clothes and all these it goes on.
I can only
forever and
imagine
ever.
what the clothing teams, the character art teams are trying to hire right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Where did I put that window? I had it open. Hold on a second. Aha. So as far as jobs go at CIG, there's 5 in Los Angeles, 1 in Austin, 12 in Frankfurt, 62 in Manchester.
Woo.
And Turbulent will be hosted on the Cloud Imperium site for
What's
the
the
Montreal
math
studio.
on what that total
80
is?
of them.
Okay,
80
so there's
positions.
80, but that's a good thing. There's 80 positions open right now.
Yes.
And several.
That is not all of them. Remember, they want to grow this. This is just what they can hire today.
But yeah,
They want these numbers.
That number was
hundreds
100.
forward.
That number was 140 not several months ago. They're hiring like crazy. And it's a good thing. People
Montreal
have been worried
hasn't
that
even opened yet.
Yeah. Montreal is open, but you have to go look at their website and see, how many people they're hiring. And we don't know if they're being hired for the CIG side of the house, the Star Citizen side of the house, or,
it does say.
Turbulent. Oh, it does? Okay.
It does. One of them is Montreal, or not Montreal, Turbulent specific. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are Star Citizen.
Heinous Animal just gave me a follow. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks for following the project.
You also
and
missed
then
Blizzrad.
But Heinous Animal also donated $5 to StackUp.org. So thank you so much for your donation. I really appreciate it. I don't know if you were here earlier, and you caught that part, but everything goes to StackUp. Everything goes to charity. Oh my God, Blizzard.
And then Blizzard subbed.
Yeah. Oh, Blizzard subbed again. Awesome. Thank you so much. So yeah, it's everybody's like, oh, they're losing people faster than they can. No, we just looked at the charts, and we're looking at them growing year after year, and we can see from months ago the open jobs was 140, now it's 80 something. So they've hired 50 plus people over the last several months. They're closing in on that goal of and that number was the difference between 860 and 1,000. That size goal that they're looking at, and they're closing in on that goal. That's where they want to be before the end of the year. I'm saying it right. Heinous Animal Zero said, just catching now. Vet myself, play to escape. Awesome. Thank you for your service. Much appreciated. Yep, that's why I play video games, and that's why I have, I started this little community because I enjoy hanging out with all of you people, and by you people I mean everybody in chat and Nazeris and the Armchair Admirals and general people and all the people in my Discord, Paul's Discord. This is, I'm a dad and I have a full-time job and a half. You guys are my friends. This is my equivalent of hanging out on the front porch drinking beer with the neighbors. Yeah.
What do you mean,
you people? You know exactly what I mean, Blizzrad. You people. You people and your war crimes. But yeah,
What?
it is
I haven't
almost...
committed any in the past 4 hours.
Nazeris, you're guilty by association. You are far too involved with this to not be brought in under suspicion just by proximity to Blizzrad. And Ghost 1800, it's just as bad.
Per my
at this
agreement
point.
with the UEE, I'm not allowed to be convicted of any war crimes in association with or doing any myself. I need to make sure to keep it on the DL, okay? Just don't tell the UEE, just don't tell the advocacy, okay?
Yeah. Secret safe with me, I'm going to be in Tyrol, avoiding the law like crazy. Shempasta, I'm former active duty infantry marine, and I'm currently a Army National Guard critical care flight paramedic. So that's what I still do in the military. I'm just on active duty orders with the National Guard at a course right now. So I'm away from home for an extended period. Just training and education stuff. Super easy, pretty chill.
Yep.
But yeah, it is almost 11 o'clock, and I have to be up pretty early, and it's
What do you mean?
even
You mean
later.
almost 12 o'clock?
Yeah, it's even later for you, Naz. Heinous Animal says, have watched your YouTube videos. I enjoy the content. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Or, sorry. Thank you, man, woman, child, dog, whatever you identify with.
Just thank
I try
you.
to- I try to respect everybody. But yeah, thank you so much for that. This will be up on YouTube towards the end of the week. And I always, you're probably aware. Yeah, dude. Yep, dude is the thing. I'm from NorCal. I'm from Tahoe. I dude everything. Every inanimate object is a dude, especially if I'm frustrated. But yeah. Oh, so no, we already talked about that. Yeah, the script. Yep. And then keep an eye out on Space Tomato, because he's working on editing it. But for his 100th episode of either Launch Sequence or Citizen Central, I forget which one it was, he interviewed, did little short interviews with a bunch of content creators, including Nazeris and I, tying it all together in one video. So you should be seeing that pretty soon. And we're probably we're trying to figure out scheduling of when we can be back up on the Launch Sequence podcast with Space Tomato. So hopefully we'll get that done soon. I gotta call it a night. Let's find somebody to raid. Naz, do you have any suggestions?
Who do I have open? Currently in my follows list, the only person playing Star Citizen is Kitty 8 Cupcake. But they have almost 300 people, so probably somebody smaller.
Chat, do me a favor. Why don't we... Let's see.
In recommended,
manager,
there is
raid.
Xylotext and Momis308. What time or what day were we looking at being back?
Saturday? Do you want to do Saturday for monthly reports?
22nd or 15th? 15th is this Saturday. 22nd is next Saturday.
Hold on, let me look at my calendar real quick.
Okay, so that's what I'm doing right now.
Chat, do me a favor, chat. If you guys will find somebody that you guys think that we should raid, somebody who could use the viewers, let's bump their numbers up and help somebody out, somebody in need. So our bye week is the first week of May. So so if we do it like this 15th, it'll be out on YouTube the week of the 16th, and then the 19th is the next Roadmap Roundup.
Oh, it's Mom's.
And so that Roadmap Roundup, we'll do that one with your scanner anomaly, and we can do that on the 22nd, 23rd, whichever works better for you. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Both those
so yeah.
ones I do have off that evening. Yes.
Those of you in chat, if you want to come and hang out with us when we go over the monthly reports, we'll be doing that this Saturday. I'll put the event in my Discord, and I'll also put out notices on my Twitter. And then, yeah, so this Saturday, the 15th, and the following Saturday, the 22nd, we'll be covering the next Roadmap Roundup, kind of like we did today. And Nazeris will have your scanner anomaly for that evening. But yeah, did we think of someone to raid? Twitch.tv moms308.
That's what it sounds like.
Okay, let's see. How do I spell that?
I don't know if it's Moms or if it's Mo. I don't know. Who knows? They know. Go ask them what it is.
There we go. It looks like they're playing with Microsoft Paint.
Yep. Not streaming, just talk. I don't know if they're just like in the middle of something.
All right.
There's sub bars blocking it, so I don't know what they're doing.
I don't know what they're doing either. You guys are going to find out for us and report back. Not streaming, just talking, actually. Sure. Whatever.
So are we.
It
doesn't
got
matter.
17 viewers, so. All right, starting the raid. And 13 viewers are ready to raid. 15 viewers. All right, everybody ready? Raid now.
Bye.
Have a good night, everyone.
Sorry, out.